Hey guys, Kinggath here, and welcome to another episode of the Kinggath podcast. Today's guest, I believe, is on a mission to make sure no one ever sees two of the same thing ever again in Fallout 4. Welcome, Thirdstorm.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. So I actually been wanting to ask you, is that like your personal goal? Because if you look at the way your mods are headed and all the different ones that you're involved in, it looks like you just find duplication to be a sin, and like every one of your mods, if you install all of them, I don't think you could see a single duplicate anything in the game. You'd never see the same weapon, never see the same NPC. It's just everything would be randomized to infinity.
I mean, if and when I ever actually finish the gobs and gobs of stuff that isn't released and isn't quite ready for, public consumption, yeah, it will basically be like that. My goal is uh, to make it kind of like the real world, where there is almost endless variety and every person and everything looks different. I mean, even two people of the same phone, they generally don't look the same, right?
Right. Yeah, you'll have different icons on there, different backgrounds. It's pretty rare you're gonna find.
Different
I mean, you'll probably,
skins. Yeah.
you might find a couple of like granddads who've got the stock phone with whatever apps are on it, but
Oh, yeah,
that's
totally.
probably it. So, because like right now the only one I'm using of yours I think is unique NPCs, creatures, and monsters, and obviously there's that's you're gonna see some repeats obviously because you're not making all new monsters. But I was surprised that you even made some variety there. Like you took some like add-on pieces because there is like an object template system for creatures. Like the other day I ran into a death claw with some mirelurk pieces attached to it, and I was like, holy crap! Like that, what is that monstrosity?
Oh yeah, actually, with unique NPCs, creatures, and monsters, I took something that looks like Bethesda explored but never finished, and that's creating templates for their creatures. And Deathclaws are actually a great example. Instead of each individual Deathclaw subspecies being tied to a body, which kind of seemed odd for me with everything but the chameleons, I've tied it to the texture because almost all of them had a unique texture as well. So I set it up
Sure.
so they pull the body from a level list, so it's randomized every single time. I unlocked the scaling on them, so the death claws will be bigger or smaller depending on what you run into. If I could actually make it so the scaling was tied to their level, I would be so happy.
Oh, that would
Um,
be sweet.
yeah, but I mean, even with the death claws, you're going to see a tremendous amount of variety. I think with the bloat flies, I got up to 20. There can be 28 different variations of the black bloat fly. Like just a black bloat fly has 28 different styles that you could run into.
Wow.
It's little. I mean, a lot of the stuff you don't notice until you start looking for it, but I like that.
Yeah, well, and it fits right because of the mutations. Like it's just kind of like they wouldn't all necessarily mutate exactly the same, so it makes sense for especially on the creatures to
Oh
have
yeah.
that kind of variety.
Well,
So
even
yeah,
in
that was really
nature,
cool.
you see a ton of variety. Like everyday nature, no two Robin
Right.
is going to look absolutely identical.
Sure. Oh yeah, or my little fat bulldog doesn't look like any other bulldogs in the neighborhood. So.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it goes across the spectrum there. It was just shocking to see that you could do that much with the creatures because Bethesda doesn't bother. Like they tend to have two or three varieties of each one. Maybe they'll have, and then like I think they kind of did a pattern of where there's like four different skins for a lot of the different creatures, but for the most part they all look identical other than some real minor tweaks generally to the texture. Like the glow, everything's got the glowing version, or there's usually the albino version of the creatures, but it was pretty minimal compared to what you did.
Well, actually, you're highlighting one of the things that drove me to do this in the first place. I
Okay.
went, I went a little crazy, and I'm speaking figuratively and literally, when I noticed that every single time I ran into X creature, it was always one variant. It was always the glowing variant, or whatever the highest level variant is, because the way they set up their,
Right.
their creatures, once you hit the highest level, there is no more variety. You're done.
Mm, that's true. Yeah. So you broke free of that.
I broke free of that. The entire reason why I broke free of it is because of exactly that. I was tired of seeing nothing but glowing bloatflies and glowing death claws, etc., etc., etc. I wanted more.
Yeah. Do you still have some sort of leveling thing where certain ones won't start appearing until a certain point, or do you do it full open levels?
Oh no, no, there is definitely. Generally, there is still level limiting.
Okay.
However, because I've allowed a lot of the creatures to scale with the player, uh, you can still see a black bloatfly and a glowing bloatfly in the same group. and technically you'd only see the glowing, I think, at max level.
Sure.
And the black bloatfly will be slightly weaker than glowing bloatfly, but it will still scale to a certain degree with the player.
Okay.
You won't,
Yeah,
however,
that's
see glowing bloatfly at level 1.
it's interesting how Bethesda mixed that where they've got I love that they have the capability to do both systems with the creatures being a specific hard capped level and then the ones where they can attach to the player level, but it creates kind of an interesting setup when you've got the mix going on because I'm sometimes I want it to be just a flat level. Like I like sometimes when I can go to an area where I got wrecked earlier in my playthrough and just be a badass in there. But other times, and I think it all comes down to the order you happen to do the content. Like it also sucks then to find those areas that you never got to and you get to them for the first time and they're too easy. So it would be an interesting, and I don't know, maybe this is something that already can be done, or maybe you are going to tell me I'm an idiot and this is already happening. But it would be cool if the first time you visited every area it was same level, and then it would switch over to scaling after the fact or something like that, to where it could give you that repeated content because it has the capability. The engine has the capability to do something like that.
It does. I haven't actually worked to put something like that in, mainly because that would be a ton of extra effort, and my primary focus was just getting the variety in there.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
you've definitely accomplished that. It was a pretty crazy turn to see. Like the first time I installed it was like just like shocked by how much variety there was in the creatures. Like I didn't even know it was possible to do two-headed vicious dogs, but I saw some of those, and I'm fairly sure that was your handiwork, right?
it's actually not. So I can do a lot of that stuff, but one of the things that I've been very adept at is reaching out to other mod authors, explaining what my vision was, and asking for content. Because there's no way a single person could make all of those textures and all of those models themselves,
Right.
even in like a year and a half. It's too much work. So a
Yeah.
lot of the content is actually donated. It's stuff that other authors worked on and didn't necessarily release. They had a really great idea they wanted to explore further, but they haven't actually gotten around to it. Things like that. And once they saw the success of unique NPCs, a lot more people were willing to actually dip their toes in, I guess, and start
Sure.
sharing their content.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, yeah. You've got quite a little squad of people that you tend to have. I see the same names over and over again on a handful of mods. Between you, Gambit, Mad Max, KK, a lot of people. It seems like you guys have a little pseudo team going on that all have their little specialties.
Yeah, I mean that ebbs and flows. Um, we've all learned a lot from one another, and we've all had a lot of fun exploring. Some of this stuff has been collaborative projects, and some of it's like my solo brainchild, like the creatures and monster stuff. I got a lot of good beta test feedback from those guys, etc. Uh, but unfortunately, I'm the one who actually had to put in the blood, sweat, and tears to figure the system out and make it work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're my go-to guy every time I need any information on a leveled list or object mods because of the amount of work you clearly put into this stuff is crazy. The leveled list in particular is very very complex, and it's one of those things where it seems to me like Bethesda didn't quite take it far enough. They didn't let their code iterate deep enough to make it as beautiful as I would like it, but it's still a very powerful system. And you've really pushed it to the max, and you can really see that in unique NPCs. Now, I haven't used that one personally, other than to make sure that I got an exception into Workshop Framework to make sure that your settler build could go in there. But the number of people you have in there is nuts.
Yeah, I finally figured out why. So, taking a step back, the
Okay.
creatures, the reason why I think that we didn't see the object templates that I found partially developed to get fully explored and utilized for the creatures is because you have a lot of people working on a lot of different things at the same time in any game studio. So,
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak specifically for Bethesda Game Studios, but doing IT and working in large scale teams, you know that there's not just one person working on any one project, and you're
Right.
going to have a lot of people. And so you're going to have people who do it the exact rote way, the way that you're absolutely supposed to. There's going to be people who try and sneak a few new things in,
Yeah.
and lots of things in between. And that's why we see the creatures in the hodgepodge, mismatched format that we see them. When it comes to actual humanoid NPCs that you're interacting with, for the longest time, I looked down my nose, as many new modders do at Bethesda, and thought to myself, why did they like cheap out? Why did they stop? And I didn't understand it. And of course, in my hubris, I thought that I knew better.
Okay.
And there were a lot of painful lessons that I had to learn. The short of the long is the reason why Bethesda stopped at a certain number of NPCs is because of how much data, the size each NPC takes up, gets to be a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Even for a non HD format game, you're talking about, geez, I think it's roughly three-ish megs per NPC for the face gen data. And that's actually the kicker, and that's what most mods haven't started fully exporting or finally did when I started reaching out to the individual mod authors and explaining why some of the mods out there were having performance problems. 3 megs, again, doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up quickly once you add 100 NPCs or
Right.
500, or in my case, 3,000.
That's
Suddenly it becomes
yeah.
like a significant burden. And I totally understand why Bethesda stopped at the number of NPCs they had, because it grows. I mean, you can just go crazy. You can really go crazy adding individual faces, and it just increases the size so significantly.
Oh yeah, it's actually that's something Sim Settlements needs to fix too. It's been on my to-do list forever is to add it because we have about 100 NPCs in the base mod and 100 NPCs in Conqueror, and none of them I generated the face data for, and I've been meaning to release that as a patch of just like here's an optional file, because on Xbox that would just be murder, the amount of like all that extra space, but for PC I think they would rather just have the performance over
The performance
not worry
boost,
about the
though,
space.
the performance boost is significant. Like for unique NPCs, the users that tried the 1.0 versus the 2.0, and all of the very patient people that were in the closed betas for all of that, I saw people gain 50 frames per second just by
Holy
having
crap.
oh yeah, like 50 frames
Oh.
per second from optimized face gen data being properly exported, properly packed into BA2s, properly converted into the correct size and the exact correct formats. Like the difference was kind of staggering.
Oh
And
man, well, remind
again,
me to hit you up about that later so I can make some settlements a little faster for people.
yeah, I
Because
can't.
we choke the speed hard.
Yeah, I can't guarantee it's going to solve all your problems, but especially with settlements that already struggle a bit, like you
Right.
you dip those 10 to 15 frames per second when you walk into the settlement. I mean, just right off the bat, like even if you don't have a crazy settlement, yeah,
Yeah.
you probably will see a little bit of a performance gain.
Interesting. Well, yeah, that's good to know. And you would know because how many NPCs or even if you just excluded the combinations thanks to the leveled list stuff, like how many different faces do you have in unique NPCs?
Well, I have 4,000. Technically, I've got 4,389 NPCs in unique NPCs.
That's a
So
lot
I
of
have,
NPCs.
yeah, I have more NPCs than the base game and all the DLCs have combined. By I think by like a factor of 3.
So you've got like every Fallout game Bethesda's produced beat combined.
Yeah. Now part of those NPCs, like part of those faces, are actually the vanilla NPCs that I've imported, brought in, and either done a little tweak with. Personally, I don't understand why everybody's faces are dirty once you give them running water. I mean,
Mm.
personal preference. I mean, people really are going to wash the face if they have running water, right?
I mean, maybe it's irradiated water, so maybe not.
Uh, anyway,
And it's you get dirty all the time,
you
like
do.
so maybe they're not washing regularly. I mean, I've always thought it would be a cool system to have to be able to install like a shower in your settlement, and all of a sudden your settlers would be clean more often. But it's such like minutia gameplay that it seems like a waste to do something like that.
A little bit. But let me actually give you a quick count. Give me 1 second and I can tell you.
Okay, because I'm curious like how much space that is.
Of the
And
4,000 plus NPCs I mentioned,
yeah,
825 of them are from the core game and the DLCs. And
okay.
those NPCs I've either brought in and optimized because some of them weren't perfectly, a little bit of hubris, but some of them weren't perfectly configured because you had so
Oh,
many
okay.
different people working on the game. And some of them I
Yeah.
added custom skins to. Like one of the things that Unique NPCs adds besides all the faces is the bodies are also very unique. I unlock scaling data. I put on tons of tattoo skins, scarred skins, burn skins, etc. So there is a lot of variety besides just the face.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
Sure,
So
sure. Yeah,
I want to say
that's a lot of stuff.
30, let's say 3,300
Oh
unique,
man.
yeah, unique
Now,
NPCs.
how do you do now? Is that just like minor? First of all, do you use Creation Kit to edit those faces? Do you use
You have to.
Xedit or do you
Like the
use the
only
game
way.
and like an exporter?
So I really need to get around to writing the articles that I've promised for a while. It's one of those things you can either mod or you can write articles. It'd be great if I had an assistant sitting behind me that I could like dictate to, but it doesn't work like
Uh-huh.
that. You actually have to do NPC edits in Creation Kit. If you do NPC edits in FO4 Edit, 99% of the time you're going to be making a dirty edit because the way the NPC systems work in Fallout 4 and 76 is every single one of the NPCs you're editing that another NPC is dependent on for that data,
Mm-hmm.
those changes get cascaded down. So if you make a
Oh,
change to
geez.
an NPC, if you make a change to an NPC, a core
Yeah.
NPC, let's say one of the ENC templates,
Okay.
and you do it in Xedit, right there you already have a problem. And every single time the engine pulls up one of the NPCs that pulls from that template, it's immediately seeing there's an error and it's trying to resolve it
Huh. That's a pain in the butt. But
immensely.
that's just talking about editing vanilla ones, right? That doesn't affect if you're creating your own copies.
Well, it depends. If your copies are dependent on other copies, like if you have a cascading kind of NPC system going on, then it does
Right.
matter. Um,
Huh.
if they're all standalone, no. I mean, then you're just editing each one, and you should still do it in Creation Kit, um, just because there are lots of fields that you can edit in Xedit that technically should not be touched because they're locked out, because they're pulling from a template, or you just don't have the right flags opened up to be able to make those edits, and you can only see that in Creation Kit, unfortunately.
Oh man, because the Creation Kit, the face editing in the Creation Kit is kind of a
It's
nightmare.
murder. No, it's murder. It took me the better part of I think 8 or 9 months to clean up, edit, and export every single one of the NPC faces that I had in Unique NPCs 1.0. I mean,
Wow.
uh, yeah, the average time, the max time an NPC took to clean and export was 30 minutes. The shortest time was 5.
Oh man, that's so
And
much.
yeah, I
Uh,
did that. I did that 4,000 times.
uh, how do you power through something like that? Because this is one of the things I don't think a lot of people recognize about modding is that there's a lot of that kind of work. Like a lot of the coolest ideas actually require just a ton of boring man hours, and they just require you to just kind of slowly power through them. What is your trick? Because like I think we each those of us who do this kind of thing, we each have our own tricks to get through that kind of work.
So I actually have taken a little bit of a break from modding, and I'm trying to get back in. I'm struggling a little bit, but I'm trying to get back in. Previously, with unique NPCs, creatures and monsters, Raider Overhaul, Super Mutant Redux, and all the rest of the sub projects I had, what I would do is every single time I approach a burnout with one of the projects, I'd bounce to another one of the projects, do work on that one until I started to feel a little bit of an itch. I'd go back to the first one and start working again. Um, and I had a great job that had lots of very difficult, very time consuming work that would occasionally have periods of time where I'm waiting on a process to complete. And I would, sneak over, alt tab over, do some work in Creation Kit, edit some faces, let the NPC populate, which can take up to 5 minutes sometimes in Creation Kit, and then tab back over to my job, my real job, and check the status of what I was working on and, move forward. So I would
Right.
do how I fit it in to day-to-day life is in between the work that I was doing, and how I kept from going absolutely insane and pulling all my hair out was bouncing around to projects. The downside of bouncing around to projects like that is it takes forever to complete anything, and everybody who's waiting on your stuff goes absolutely insane. So
That's true.
you
Yeah.
you stay okay, but everybody else kind of loses their shit.
Right. It's not ideal for group projects.
Well, no, it's not. The problem is, as I'm sure you know, there are some things that it's really hard to delegate because the time it takes and the process of explaining what has to be done almost takes more time than it would for you to just do it, right?
Yeah, I also have the thing of that if the particular part of the project is too boring, or I just unless I hadn't given that person any boring tasks like that, or I know that they can power through it, I just don't want to offer. I don't like giving people work that I wouldn't do myself, basically.
Sure.
So I tend to just take those tasks on because I feel like even though I probably could explain it and it doesn't necessarily need my attention, whereas maybe I should focus on the stuff that I'm the only one on the team who can do. It's just I feel bad to do that. I've always felt like that's something I get pissed at my own bosses for at work, of like in the past, of them giving out the really awful jobs to people that they would never ever, like, they would just come up with a way to not do it or to avoid it if it were on their shoulders. But because they've got underlings, they're just like, here, go do this. And I want to avoid that. So I find it's best to lead from the front in that regard. So I tend to just take those tasks on. And my personal trick is I've learned what stuff I can do where I have to focus and versus the stuff I can do with things in the background. So like for example, I can design building plans while watching television. No problem. Like
Sure.
it's like just it's that part of my brain. I can do that. No problem. Or I can do I can do file cleaning while I'm doing that. But like if I'm doing like anything, I'm doing coding, or if I'm like logicking out how a quest is going to play out, I have to have like my full focus. So I that's all me. But that's actually the interesting stuff. So I don't care. So usually the boring tasks I find I can get away with, catching up on Game of Thrones or something while I'm doing it, and that's not and then that takes care of that. But sometimes even that, then I'm just like, if the task is so boring, I'm just like pulled away. And I can imagine having to do 4,000 characters waiting with the CK. It would be very hard to keep your attention on the job at hand.
So the 4,000 characters represents
Yeah.
several 100,000 edits at a minimum. No, I'm like not exaggerating. Like I had to go in and clean up every single face. Anytime there was an error inside the faces, I'd basically, because our version of the creation kit, does not actually kick back good data to you. Like as you're editing an NPC, modifying faces, it will tell you
Yeah.
it's failed, but it won't tell you why.
Huh.
And so you have to sit there and puzzle it out. And so if you count all of the time it takes to basically, trip all the flags, change the different nose types, find the size that CK will accept with that skin texture and that
Mm-hmm.
skin tone, yeah, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of edits. Like it just
Oh my
ridiculous
God.
amounts of time. Um, well, and
Well, this gives me
you
way more respect for unique NPCs then, if you've got that
well,
many hours into it. I knew you had serious hours into it, but that's nuts.
and again, that's why everybody's has that little bit of burnout, but you have to have a lot of that as well. I mean, building a single town, you're talking about uh, hundreds, if not thousands, of individual little pieces of buildings that you have to manipulate inside the rendering window, move around, make sure it's not clipping, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's pretty time and labor intensive as well,
Oh
right?
yeah, that wasn't me. So all those city plans, that is mad props to the settlement design team, like Tank Thing and Donald Strong and Cynical Bounce, Fanciest Moon. All these folks came together and built all of those, and they actually did it in the game. And they still did put in, like, I would like. There's probably to build all of the Rise of the Commonwealth city plans. Those guys have probably got a combined total of like 6,000 hours or something, like just nutty amount of time.
It's
Uh,
beautiful though.
I agree, and I'm so glad they did it. And I felt like I wasn't pulling my weight at all on that project because of how much they were doing and how good their stuff was working. I was basically playing the support role, like I was doing, getting them more assets to work with as best I could, and then I would take, and that was like one of those projects where I felt I would just take on some of the crappy work because it was like these guys are like wonderful artists. Let me step in and take over some of the more boring parts of it. So it was like we had to do like nav mesh testing where it was walk an NPC around and make sure they could path everywhere,
And it
or
doesn't crash.
and it doesn't crash. Yeah, exactly. And then like optimization of that was actually scratched. Did almost the entire optimization on her own. She's a freaking wizard. I don't know how she must just she had the secret sauce for basically zoning out and doing tasks or something, because she probably handled, I think, 20 of the 32 we did, of taking them and cutting them down toward close to a certain level. We came up with a percentage of the build limit we could go over where it was safe, and like she took all of the beautiful designs and pared them down, So there was a lot of stuff like that, just tons of man hours into all of them across the board on the different tasks. But yeah, there's a lot of that kind of work in modding for sure.
So, I mean, don't sell yourself short with projects like that. One of the things that unfortunately learned the hard way, and I'm having to go back and redo a lot of work, is if you do take too much of it onto yourself, like if you uh, try to own the entire thing, you pay for it in the end when nobody can help you solve the problem because nobody understands what is going on in the first place. Like
Right.
I have a massive ESM that is able to be opened by Xedit. In fact, the original brainchild of Raider Overhaul that can't be opened in Xedit. Can be opened in Xedit. CK can't open. I've had the entire FO4, well, the Xedit team look at the ESM to try and find why it won't open and what needs to be done. And it's come down to at some point uh, the ESM got corrupt, and so I basically have to redo or
Ugh.
export and resave all of that. Oh
Oh
yeah.
my god.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
pretty epic.
that's. And is
But the
that
point
on
is,
is that on an unreleased project or one of your currently live projects?
oh no, it's basically the unreleased Raider Overhaul and the perpetual beta stuff that may or may not ever see the light of day.
Oh no. I'm
Well,
so looking for I've been so to the audience, Perpetual Beta is the fun nickname that Thirdstorm and friends have given themselves because the Raider Overhaul has been stuck in beta for I mean, what, like a year and a half now, more
two
than that.
years, a little over
Yeah,
two
it's for
years.
two
Yeah.
years. And I remember so when we came up with the idea for Conqueror, I contacted Thirdstorm and I said, "Hey, like, what are the chances that Perpetual Beta is almost out of perpetual state?" And he's like, "You know what? Maybe I can pull it off in a few weeks." And then obviously that didn't pan out. But
Nope.
but that's such a terrible story to hear because some of the stuff you did in that is amazing, and I imagine it involves a lot of the all the crazy object templating possibilities that
It does,
Fallout can
and it
handle.
involves a lot of mesh editing that unfortunately there is me and one or two other people that understand any of it.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, this is what you're talking about with the where if you take on too much yourself, it becomes very hard to get help.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, even with the soul crushing, monotonous stuff that's very easy to do, generally speaking, finding people who are willing to do that soul crushing, monotonous work that requires hours and hours and hours of mindless, slow and tedious edits, nobody
Yeah.
wants to do that. No,
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Nobody.
other than me, nobody wants to do that.
Right. Right. I feel. I mean, that's we have a lot of projects in the back burner like that people have asked us to do, and I want to do them in the sense of like I hate having imperfect stuff out there, but it's like you start thinking about the hours, like who's going to do that? Who has the hours to do that? Like I don't. If I'm going to actually pull off all the stuff we have planned in on the timelines we do, so yeah, and it's hard to find, and you'll find occasionally, and I'm sure you could too, if you put out feelers, you'd get volunteers who would be like, yeah, I can help you with that, but then once they get the task,
Oh,
give
yeah,
them a week or two and they burn out, and they're like, no, this is awful. Like
and
I
that's
would,
yeah, and they either don't finish it. The
right,
work basically starts out really great and then tapers off, and you end up having to redo all of it anyway.
right.
Or you basically never hear from them again after the first or second conversation you have with them, just because they become completely terrified.
Oh yeah, I've felt all of this. So this is all he's speaking some serious truth here. Yeah, it's so unfortunate because I know a lot of there are definitely people out there who could hang and do that if they understood the value of what they're doing. But yeah, I think that's the type of stuff I was talking about where I think ultimately it just kind of falls on our shoulders. Like if we actually want to see it happen, just got to do it because you got to have that desire for that perfectionism in order to pull it off and to
So,
slog through.
how do you handle, as an author who's put out quite a bit of really impressive stuff, how do you handle people basically just not being satisfied with the development cycle? Like, how do you not go crazy whenever somebody asks for something that they know you're working on that's not ready yet? Like, handle the perpetual questions and the constant nagging that occurs with stuff like that. Because
Well,
I'll be
I
perfectly
I
honest,
have I have probably the craziest mod dev cycle that's ever been done before. So, I mean, we do bi-weekly patches religiously. We try and release a new expansion pack. Like we did two the first year, one the second year, and I guess we missed the second year, but no, actually we hit it within 2 months. So we released the one in the second year, and we have another one in development right now. So we just have. I mean, we're cranking out content faster than Bethesda is. So it's So I don't get a lot of flack for it. There are a handful of features or bugs that I've just ignored forever, and there's always going to be somebody who's just like, come on, man, like stop giving us new crap and fix this old stuff. But I think we tend to. So far as I can tell, people, they, as long as they know that it's on my list, they seem to be okay with it. But we're putting out so much new stuff all the time. I think people tend to just forget about some of the old broken stuff, or if they continue to play with it over and over again, they just learn to ignore that. For example, one of Yagi-san, and I sorry man, I always butcher pronouncing your name out loud, does city plans for some settlements, does tons of them. They're really great, and he really gets involved with them and makes them all thematic and everything. And there's an issue where, and it's a combination of issues with transfer settlements and with sim settlements, and Dante is happy to work with me to get it resolved anytime. I just haven't taken the time. But the advanced industrial plots, the ones that let you kind of fork the building plan, they don't work with the city plans very well. And that's been something where he's been, poking me like once a month, like, hey, just want to make sure you don't forget that. And I just haven't had the time, and I know the amount of effort it would take to fix all of our city plans to get that. It's just the amount of hours. Like I look at it, I'm like, all right, well I'm not just putting in, the hours to fix the bug. It's then I also need to go retro fix all of our city plans. So like that's like 100 hours minimum man hours. So like it tends to be I just stack things up. I guess I'm getting off topic from the question you asked, but I tend to get to a point where I just look at risk, or is the juice worth the squeeze in my projects. I want to focus on the things where I can get maximum output for my time. And then I'll periodically set aside time to work on that long, tedious stuff that gets things closer to perfection, but maybe isn't going to have, like people read it in the patch notes and it's not particularly exciting. But, to that one guy out there who's really been waiting for it, it's really important. And then for me personally, when I, look at my project as a whole and I'm trying to make sure that there are no rough edges, I'm trying to get things at minimum to Bethesda standards, and that's kind of a joke because people would look at how buggy a lot of Bethesda stuff is, but they still are professional, and they still have a fairly they've got a pretty good looking game on our hands. Like everything has a consistency to it. They've got a good art style. Like there's a professionalism to it, even if it's not perfect. And I try to get to that level. And so so that's what drives me to actually want to do that. But as far as the people nagging on it, I don't think we suffer from it as much as most mod teams, just because of how quickly we're putting out updates in general.
No, and actually, I think one of the mistakes that I made very early on, which I think that you guys avoided as a whole, is I did the feature creep, and things got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Oh no, we didn't avoid that at all. I'm sure anybody on my team listening to this is probably laughing hysterically because just because I get made fun of it on the team for it because I'm always feature creeping. But maybe just we don't do it as publicly as you do. Because like I've seen some previews of the feature creep you did to Raider Overhaul for a while, and I don't know if I saw those because you sent them to me or because were you posting those public? Because I think I might have seen them on like Juicehead's channel.
Well, some of it was posted publicly, and I had a leak for a little while where people were putting up some of the test photos and some of the work in progress stuff.
Okay.
So a little bit of both.
Yeah, that definitely adds pressure because I think that's one thing. Like we try and keep things like way under wraps. I mean, I've been motivated always by the way they revealed Fallout 4. I thought that was amazing, where they waited until it was ready before they even exposed it. They didn't even tell you knew eventually Fallout 4 was coming, but when they announced it, it was essentially in production at that point. Like it was 3 months out, and I loved that. So I've always tried to push for that kind of idea of like we don't tell anybody what's coming in our in the next expansion until we've got it locked down and mostly done. So like we put out our trailers, a couple weeks before release. So it's if something falls through the cracks, like nobody knows about it, like except for the team.
Well, next time I'll do that.
It's hard though. Like it's hard to keep it close to the chest because you need to have a big enough team to do all that. Like you said, to do all of the work you've done in some of these mods by yourself would take you like 10 years. Like it's just not feasible. You got to have help. And if you're going to get help, you have to kind of advertise what you're doing a little bit.
Yeah. So how do you manage good beta testing? I mean, for you, that's got to be especially difficult.
Oh yeah, it's really difficult. So I actually got lucky. So when we first launched Sim Settlements, I had a pair of gentlemen, Wood Fuzzy and Crazy Horse, who are both, I believe they're both retired, and they were addicted to Sim Settlements to the point where they were playing it like all day, every day, and they were very, very thorough about testing stuff, especially Wood Fuzzy, and they used to play all of my beta stuff, and so they would find all these issues for me. And I think I burned them out because with the first two expansions, the first expansion, Industrial Revolution, had a pretty long dev cycle in beta where I was giving them pretty regular updates to play with. And then Rise of the Commonwealth, we hit crunch on it in 1 month. We wrapped up a lot and had probably like 15 beta tests in a row, like one every single day, a new build.
Oh wow.
And I think that like soured them on the process. And then for Conqueror, it was much worse. At least the testing crunch, just because so much of the code came together all at once, where it was very difficult to test it in pieces. Just the way the development cycle came out, like it was required first to have workshop framework running. Anyway, Conqueror is a very complicated thing under the hood, and so the testing, I think, basically like those guys got sick of the game and got sick of me after that and left. So now we're at a point where we actually we're running real slim on beta testers at all. So it's something that I've recently recruited a handful of people more to beta test, and what I find is odd, and I don't know if it's a matter of like maybe you've experienced this too, but I find generally when I put out a call to like ask for help, I need somebody to do this, or I'm looking for some people to try this, it tends to be I will get a lot of responses and then very little follow-up. So it might be I get 10 people who say yes, I'm in. I'll respond to them all maybe less than a week later, and a third of them will actually still be interested. It's like, what happened in 6 days that changed your mind? I don't know what that's about. But
Oh no, the biggest problem that I had is people were willing to take the mod, but actually getting feedback from them as to what was going wrong,
right,
or what they saw, that I would never get back.
Yeah, that's tough, and I don't know what the secret sauce is. Like so far, right now, I'm getting feedback from two people. From XV, who does add-on packs for Sim Settlements, so he's invested, like he's got skin in the game. And then Phil T. Casual has just joined our testing team, and he's been very, very receptive and productive on giving me feedback, which is really fantastic. So I think it's just kind of developing relationships with a few people that you can trust. That's the only thing I've found that's worked so far. Like the testers that I've had that have stuck around and actually return results to me, it was just because I was just trying to be interactive with them as much as possible. It's the only way I could do it. And I know that's tough. Like you only have so much time in the day to interact with people and mod and hang out with your family. Like it's a tough balancing act.
Yeah. So, yes. I mean, in a nutshell, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't have a secret for you or anything. Like I think I struggle with it just as much as everybody else. And I think it shows. I think we have just as many bug reports as any other mod, and it's unfortunate. I hate bugs, but I think, like I said, I think the only reason that we still have a huge following and get away with it is because people know it'll get patched out eventually. Like we're constantly updating. If anybody who finds a game-breaking bug, I will stay up all night and hotfix. Like I'm very adamant about making sure this is at least a functional piece of gameplay out there, even if it's not perfect.
No, I like that, and I mean for me, when I did like the Super Mutant Redux update, the unique NPCs update, and the unique creatures and monsters launch, generally for the first 2 weeks to month, I am on it constantly. In fact, to the point where people complain about how frequently I'm throwing out hotfixes. I'm sure you've actually got a couple
times. Yeah, and that's like, really, you're complaining about fixes? But I guess you forget about that. There are a lot of people in the world who don't just have unlimited bandwidth or who don't have great high-speed internet. So.
And people don't realize.
We were talking before the stream. It's like, man, am I jealous of South Korea?
Oh yeah, perfect broadband. Yeah. No, it's one of those things, and then I have a tendency to go into a little bit of a black hole as I try and get back in the zone for creation.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you talk to people, the less you get done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And well, I think that's yeah. It's always just that life balance. I'll never claim to have it perfected. I'm always trying to change different tactics and how much time I put on every particular thing. I think I'm currently in as far as like balancing out things. I've got the best workflow or the best cycle I've ever had in my life as far as work life balance and project balance. And I found that what I had been doing wrong all my life is trying. So I always have 3 or 4 projects going on, whether it be work or modding or whatever, and I used to try and get X amount of time into each every week. And what I did recently was switched it to 2 week blocks, and that just changed everything. Like I'm still getting the appropriate time, but by stretching it out, it just for some reason it makes a huge difference. Where
Really?
like I keep up with my projects. Yeah, because then if it allows me to leave a little more time for like you know how modding goes where you're sure it's going to take you this amount of time to do X, and then you look at the clock, that time's up, and you're a fifth of the way through.
Yes.
Occasionally you run into that thing, and it's just like having those projects spread out just gives you a little more. You get to work in some buffer time, and also it builds in protection from burnout too. So, like for example, we've got our live patches, which is right now is all Conqueror content, and then we've got our next expansion being developed. Well, I have X amount of days each week to each project. Where I've got a few hours for each of them. And so if I start to find myself burning out on one, I know within a few days I'll be on to the next one. And so for some reason, the 2 week cycle was like a game changer for me of keeping burnout at bay, and making sure I actually get some time into all my projects and not feeling as pressured. So that's been working for me personally.
No, I dig it. I dig it. I mean, that's actually something that I should probably explore in greater detail.
Well, your stuff also is it's got a little bit of a longer dev cycle on it, I think, because you're talking about because in order for your stuff to be really impactful and to hit the vision that you want, I mean, your aim is to completely overhaul a specific part of the game. You're looking to completely transform something, and part of the way the game works is, especially with leveled lists and stuff, you kind of need that to not be patched. Like you kind of need it to all just be in there and ready to go at launch. Otherwise, people aren't necessarily going to get the full advantage out of it if they update mid game, because just by the nature of the way leveled lists work. So you kind of are forced to do stuff with a bit more upfront thought and a lot more work than I am.
Yes and no. I mean, there are changes you can make in line, like in-stream changes. The player has to suffer through one, set of cell resets for everything to go back to normal. And if you can handle everybody crying foul about that, you can.
Okay.
Um, I mean, you're right. It's best to just do one major update, establish what the new content and the overhaul is going to be, and basically walk away and only do fixes from that point.
Right.
And slowly roll out new content. And, that is something I learned and something that I will definitely do going forward. However, having a little bit of a bouncing dev cycle, I got
Yeah.
talked out of. Basically, I got talked out of doing that, where I would bounce from project to project to project to keep from burning out. And by being talked out of it, I did exactly what I knew was going to happen, and that's burn out pretty hard.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on the idea of bouncing between projects. I think is a good thing, and another way I don't have nearly as many projects going as you do. I have a lot, but I tend to do focused building. So like I actually have I've got Workshop Plus and Workshop Framework as well, but I those are just basically I've got them at a stable point right now, so they're just shelved for a while, and like I try to keep myself limited to essentially like 2 primary projects, and then I'll every once in a while I'll throw in some time for some third project, but otherwise the rest remain dormant. And what I've found is within the same project there's a lot of variety you can do, and I think you have the same thing going on. So if you look at something like Perpetual Beta, aka Raider Overhaul, you've got there's a lot of NIF work to do, there's a ton of CK work to do, there's probably a lot of stuff you can I don't know how much you do with script injection or with what do you call it, like Xedit scripting to automate some of the process of generation of that stuff, but you have a lot of different types of jobs, and I think you could break things up like that too to avoid burnout.
So the problem that I've run into with that is I'm still learning a lot. As a lot of good mod authors will admit, they learn as they go, and there's always new
For
things to
sure.
pick up. I've got this bad habit, and it goes back to the feature creep, that if I bounce around inside a project and start working on, let's say, a NIF. And for the longest time, when I had KK working with me, pretty hardcore, I refused to open up 3ds Max. I refused to open up Outfit Studio just because I knew that if I did that, I was going to get stuck down that rabbit hole for a while.
Right,
And
like you're going to want to learn and master that software before you move on.
or well, it's not just that. It's as soon as I make an edit to something, suddenly, a light bulb pops.
Yes.
And there's like, I can do this
Right.
in this 7 things, and suddenly I've gotten distracted. I've added an extra 10% to the size of the mod, and I still haven't got accomplished what I was originally trying to do in the first place. And so I've got to be, for me at least, I've got to be very careful with that,
Yeah.
just because I do have a tendency to really squirrel, as we call it within the group.
Oh, that's funny. I feel you. I've been avoiding. So I actually trained to be an animator at one point in my life, and so I used to know how to animate in 3ds Max, and what I've learned is that 3ds Max has the core functionality of it has not really changed. I think it's been almost 20 years since I first learned it, but the core of it is still the same. Like I open it up and I'm very comfortable in it and I know how to mess with the models, but I'm like, if I reteach myself animation, that's going to take me down a hole where no one's going to see me again, because that's like, there's such a need for it in the community. There's so few people who actually do it. And it's like, I know I could do it, but I refuse to do it for exactly the reason you just described, is like, I know that'll just like, that's going to swallow me if I get into that.
But wouldn't it be awesome?
It would be so awesome. But yeah, it's kind of already, I've kind of already let it happen now with quest mods, is that we've went down the quest mod route with Conqueror, because we knew we wanted a cleaner interface instead of. So one of the things that always drives me nuts with modding for Bethesda games is it's so hard to do nice user interface. Like their UI is locked down so hard, and you can't really inject any new buttons, and so you're kind of stuck with these hacks, essentially, like these clunkier hack type things. And so the solution I find is, if you then teach it through questing and stuff, at least it can feel natural. It can all be done in game. And so when we did that with Conqueror, and it's just been so much fun, now I'm finding myself really obsessed with quest creation. So that's kind of got me down a rabbit hole. But fortunately, I'm picking it up really quickly, so it's not going to completely derail me, and it's useful for live content.
That's awesome.
But yeah, but I could see, the animation would be so awesome, because there's so much cool stuff that we could do with this game engine still.
Okay, so I've got another fun question for you. How do you manage to balance perfection and good enough?
First, I have to ask, what are these screenshots you sent me? Maybe I'll post them up on the video midway through so people can see them, because they just distracted me. I just saw this crazy looking face pop up on my screen.
So right now I'm going through and I'm trying to find some of the photos from some of the stuff that I was working on before, and there's one particular set of squirreling that I'm trying to find pictures of, if I can find it, to demonstrate like the little rabbit holes you can go down.
Gotcha. Okay, so we'll circle back to these then when you're done sending me photos. I'll just cover it up for now so I don't get distracted.
Sure.
You're better at this interviewing than I am. You're throwing all the questions back to me. What was your question again?
Well, how do you balance good, like, perfection with good enough? Like, one of the things that I've struggled with the most is nothing is ever good enough, because I know how critical players are. Like, I fundamentally know how much of a pain they can be to work with, because I was one of those people.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, it's hard to get useful feedback from people. It's hard to get people back if you spurn them the first time. Like, there's a lot, and I get it. Like, there's so many. This is what I keep saying to everybody is what I don't think a lot of model authors realize anymore is we're competing with AAA studios for people's attention, because free to play is one of the most it's one of the biggest models right now. So we're effectively competing with these mega studios with multi-$100 million budgets. So we have to at least try and deliver, we have to at least match the quality of the game we're modding. And in some aspects where we basically have to exceed it. Otherwise, all this work is going to be in vain, because you're going to put in all these hours, but you're going to have so few users that it's going to feel eventually like, all right, well, I guess I just did that for myself. And while a lot of people will claim, oh, I am just doing this for myself, like, I call BS on that. Like, I think if you're the type of person who who releases your mods, it's because you want other people to enjoy it, and you're putting in all those hours because you know you're providing a lot of joy for other people. It's not just for yourself. And so I think that kind of drives me in the sense that like I know I am partially driven by those downloads and those thumbs up. Like I know you joked earlier about YouTube and Twitch can be kind of a narcissistic draw, and I think we all have a little narcissist in us. I probably have more than most if I do a YouTube channel and everything, but there's a certain inspiration that comes from that, certain motivation from having people paying attention to what you're doing, but it also helps to keep me honest. So I have in the past in my life started big projects that no one knew about, and I would bail on them, and there was nobody to call me out on that. And I think that would let me develop bad habits. So it's I don't like I try to keep my word as often as possible, and I think that by doing my stuff publicly like this, it forces me to treat it that same way of like I promised this in a sense, so I have to deliver it, and it just lets me commit a little harder and do better that way. And so by releasing stuff frequently, I make sure that the audience is keeping me honest, keeping me producing things. I've also heard I've heard successful people say that releasing things is more important than perfection, because if you're not releasing things, then when are you actually the artist? So if you constantly are just producing things for yourself and you're never actually reaching anything to even pseudo finished, or because once it's out in the world, it's kind of finished in a sense. Like you can come back to it and you can make tweaks to it, but it's out there. It's in other people's hands. So there's other people who are getting invested in it. And if you never do that, then did you ever actually create anything? And like that kind of philosophical look at things it kind of drives me there.
No, I dig that. And I think that's a very valid point. I mean, if it never sees the light of day, you play with it, and maybe it doesn't actually even get completed. What was the point?
Right. I mean,
Okay,
and
so
like you could chase that rabbit hole down and say like, well, what's the point of anything? I always say is like if you dig deeper. But I mean, if the goal you set out to was to create something for other people, then get it to a point where it's like I said, my goal is if once we get it to a point where it's at least as good as the core game, I'm comfortable releasing it. Like maybe I have aspirations to make it better, but that's the type of stuff that you can do after the fact. You can go if it's that important to you, you will make the time and iterate over it and come back to it. And especially once people start seeing it and they give you that encouragement and be like, yeah, this is amazing, I can't wait to see what else you do with it. And then you're like, oh wait, well just wait to see what I got to, I can blow your socks off with this next thing I got in mind.
So again, that goes back to I'm not going to do the giant overarching projects anymore. I'm going to try to do things in modules, and then maybe at a later date combine them together, as making
Okay,
one
I like
massive
that.
thing is crazy. Okay, so I just sent you a file.
Okay.
This is going to be a good demonstration of the kind of rabbit holing I do. Let me know when you've
Okay.
downloaded it and opened it up.
Okay, so it's called, for people, because none of this is like they can't see my screen, but the file is called Coastal Raiders Lobster Trap. So I can't wait to see what we got here. Let's see here. All right, it's downloading. I have very, very terrible internet, so you're gonna have to give it a few minutes. But you also sent me some screenshots. Are these screenshots related to that?
No, the other screenshots I sent you were just things that that popped up as I was going through. Basically some of the testing that I did as I found ways to make the object templates work with armor in ways that people said couldn't be done.
Okay.
Well, and this is some of the stuff that everybody's waiting for with raiders that have unique trophies and very, very distinct different sets of armor, things like that. Eventually, I really hope to have this released.
I mean, the stuff you guys can find it on various places. Like I know Juicehead has covered it on. That's how I first heard about it. I believe is he had done one of those when he used to do that series where it was like upcoming mods. There was he did some stuff showing off a lot of the stuff you guys have planned, and I've since seen a lot of screenshots from you and KK, and the stuff you guys have already figured out for this is nuts, and just like the level of depth to it. So I can't wait till you get that released. In fact, I had been hounding you for when we released Conqueror, because I knew people would want to use the two in tandem. In fact, somebody already put out a patch to combine what you do have out there with Conqueror. Okay,
Yeah,
so I now have
and
have this open.
a lot of that
Go
fault
ahead.
lies on me. I should have been a little bit more upfront. I got injured pretty severely around Thanksgiving, and I was trying to just muscle through it. And finally, I just I couldn't do what I
Oh,
wanted to do.
I don't
No,
fault
no,
you at
no.
all. I
I
get
fault
it.
myself. I'm just saying that I should have been
Okay.
more honest with people in the beginning.
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay, so this is one of the examples of a rabbit hole I went down. So the lobster trap helmet
Yep.
is from
I definitely
Far
need to show
Harbor.
some screenshots on here because this is great.
Okay, so well, the screenshots there don't actually show anything. Show as much as could be shown. I basically
Okay.
took that lobster trap helmet, took it
Okay.
apart, and there are 7 variants, including the core vanilla one. And the 7 variants
Okay.
include slightly different variants on the core function of the lobster trap. So it's slightly different sizes, slightly different colored
Yeah.
woods. Actually take some of the static lobster traps that you can find in the world, because there's a couple different types of them, and actually
Okay.
turn them into the helmet as well. Then I added a series of mod calls, basically variables, so you could
Okay.
have different series of fencing that would
Oh
spawn
yeah,
with it.
I can see that in some of these. Some of them you have like chicken fencing. Others are like chain link. And then you've
Exactly.
got various types of rope. Yeah, this is quite the
Then you have
depth for that one little thing.
then you have the cloth covering.
And then you have the cloth covering, yeah, and then you've
Yeah,
got like a net covering, and then there's also like a with or without this kind of head wrap that's also that green cloth.
exactly. And so you've got all of this that, basically goes in, and you take one helmet that has now 8 base variables, 3 secondary variables, 2 variables after that, then with or without cloth, which is another 2, and then you can have with or without that little hood portion.
Mm-hmm.
So you have one helmet that now has 192 possible variants in
Oh
game.
my god! Now let me ask you something. Now, when you get down that rabbit hole, do you ever think to yourself that no one's going to want this much customizability for this particular helmet?
Well, this is where, like, a year and a half ago, even a year ago, uh,
Yeah.
the group that we had, it was quite a few of us. It was KK, Monkey Spunk, and quite a few other people. We had a wonderful channel that was all mod authors, and the problem is we were enablers,
Sure.
hardcore enablers. So when I asked that question, would anyone want this? The answer is always yes. And it's true. No, no, there are a lot of people who want that and will be very,
Right.
very happy to see that kind of variety and have that much control over their character's personal appearance. And their character will never look like another NPC in the world, ever.
Okay.
But there's
But
also a
are
lot of
those
people.
players going to be playing with the lobster trap helmet? Is my
Well,
question.
but the point
Yeah.
is the lobster trap helmet has probably the least amount of possible variants of any of the helmets that I actually touched.
Oh my god. And this is yeah. I can. I mean, just look at this. There's like you sent me like 20 images. All of them are different, and I can. I mean, just without thinking about it, you can tell there's plenty more combinations without even knowing you've done the math, and it's almost 200 combinations. Like to me, it would be like just seeing. Even if it were just like 2 or 3 variations that enemies could use, that would be cool. Like that could be, it could make an awesome thing for like a funky little faction,
Yeah.
like a little side faction of raiders or something that just wear these ridiculous helmets.
Well, and that's what the trappers were supposed to be. It's like Bethesda. Again, I'm not trying to sound like I know more or terribly
Yeah,
condescending. Like, especially Far Harbor, it's really beautiful. I mean, it is really well done. But the raider factions, the trappers, there was clearly supposed to be a very distinct land-based trappers and shore trappers. Like, they even have the level list set up originally differently, so
uh
there's
huh.
going to be 2. And so doing
Interesting.
something like this, where all of the ones on the shore, where dive helmets or lobster trap helmets or things like that, and all of the ones inland,
Yeah,
where other things, does help make them kind of distinct without actually
yeah,
creating a new third faction. Just by following through a little further with what Bethesda started, it just
yeah.
makes them it just makes it look better.
Yeah, that's actually one of my. You're bringing up a point. That's one of my favorite parts of the way Fallout 4 is set up. I really and a lot of mods break this with a lot with the with their leveled list injection. And this is something I was just talking to Gambit about, and I don't know. I don't. I didn't. It was hard to get a grasp on how he feels about this, but I'll ask you about it. I really love the fact that they gave a distinct feel to each of the factions. And there are some mods out there that kind of break it, that to like ignore the fact that the gunners are supposed to be wearing kind of military and they have kind of a green theme to them, or the raiders, the vanilla raiders are supposed like tend to have like a brown and gray aesthetic to them, and they stick to metals and leathers, and it kind of gives them this cohesive feel. And I really love that Bethesda did that. They just didn't take it quite as far as they should have, as you're describing in Far Harbor. What are your thoughts on the way the vanilla game is set up in that way?
I'm of two minds here. One, the vanilla game is by itself very good, and the factions do look good and they look nice. Um, do I like mods that at their core stay true to what the vanilla factions are and maybe just add some more variables? Like one of my favorite Brotherhood of Steel mod basically just adds T45 through T60 to all of the Brotherhood Knights, with the T45 on the lowest ranking members and the T60 on the highest ranking members. It's a very subtle change, and it's brilliant. Like, it is absolutely brilliant, and it's a great way to handle like increasing the variety and keeping with the spirit. Do I
Sure.
like mods that add gunners wearing synth armor or bright pink colors? Not so much.
And I can understand the logic behind having them do it. Like if you consider the fact that this is, people are scavenging, that just like you, the player, you're just using whatever you can get your hands on. The same would probably be true for all of the factions, but there's something about there's a reason that they have art guidelines in these games, because it's just something that just feels better when they have a similar tone to them. Even
I
though
agree.
maybe it's not necessarily realistic, like sometimes you sacrifice realism for style, and that's where I'm at with that.
I don't know. I think it's pretty realistic. I mean, if you look historically at most wars, um, a lot of time is spent, unless it's a purely guerrilla-based war, a lot of time and energy is spent making sure you can easily identify friendlies from foes.
That's true. You don't want that in the chaos of battle to be murdering your buddies.
Yeah, you don't want friendly fire. So making sure all the gunners are in army green, even if they're taking somebody's dirty wife beater and dunking it in some green dye, they're gonna do
Right.
that to make sure they don't kill that guy.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair. That's true. Um, but yeah, I've seen some mods where it's just kind of injecting all sorts of crazy stuff, and I know some of the records in for the Sim Settlements visitors and civilians I need to go clean up, because we used outfits that don't fit with the settler theme, because even the settlers have kind of a theme to them. It makes it like just from a distance you can identify, whether somebody's a civilian or a raider or whatever, and
So
I really appreciate that.
I I agree and I disagree a little bit there. Like,
Okay.
again, I haven't actually played Fallout 4 in over 2.5 years. Like,
You and most modern.
yeah, yeah. So when I say this, understand that there's a little bit of a disconnect. But
Okay.
when I had settlers, and I was really big into settlements, I have some I think I still have some of the photos of some of my more epic settlements. I used to really be into base building. I
Okay.
loved the concept of having a rogue gunner who basically said, "I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore," who walks away with his gear. I
Oh, sure,
totally
sure.
see, yeah, I totally see a gunner wandering away with all of his gear and saying, "I'm done with this lifestyle. I want to farm. Just let me effing farm."
Right.
Um, Same with a raider. I totally expect a raider to walk away, and the raider's going to have trouble putting down that set of very unique armor. They might put
Yeah.
on a clean pair of pants, but they're probably still going to wear that really stylized armor they made themselves. So that
See, so
kind of thing.
I would argue, in the same vein that you say people would clean up their faces, that they would also put down the fighting gear and put on some farmer's clothes.
Well, yes and no. I mean, everybody in the wasteland, especially in X Gunner or an X Raider, they know what the score is. Like, they know that if they put the gun down and they literally turn their sword into a plowshare, they will die. They
Hmm.
have to be willing to fight for what they want. Again, we're getting
Yeah.
deeper into the lore and psychology of Fallout, but so they're not necessarily going to put their gun away,
Yeah.
but they're no longer going to be going and trying to conquer and steal, rape, and murder. So I think there's a difference.
they would make great guards. Like, and in
Well,
fact, actually,
absolutely, and that's what I did.
that's a
That's
system Bethesda tried to do, and they kind of backed out on a little
no,
bit.
and that's another one of those unexplored things. Absolutely, like um, in unique NPCs, I tried having the guards use a better tier of equipment, like when they would actually spawn into the game. just so you'd have that. And I think that would be great, like if you actually had the occasional rare, in quotes, guard NPC that showed up that was an X whatever faction. I mean, even
Yeah.
Brotherhood, you're totally going to have burned out Brotherhood of Steel members who just say, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore.
Right. But I think those guys would definitely abandon their gear for the sake of
Well, okay,
not
yes.
getting picked up as deserters.
Yes, yes. You definitely have me there.
But yeah, we could go. I mean, we could go on all day. It's one of those funny things about trying to walk the balance between realism and fun for gameplay. Like I've gotten into it with people over how far we take it, because in some aspects it's great. I like using real life as a fallback when we don't have an answer to a question. But sometimes it's more fun to not dig in too deep and just let it sit by, like, what's fun and what looks cool, and leave it at that, as opposed to getting in too deep. Because if we take this argument far enough, somebody else could come in, and then it can get down to subjectivity, because we obviously can't simulate this to find out for real. So it's like, there's probably arguments in any direction with it. But at the end of the day, I really appreciate the fact that Bethesda put in these palettes, and it looks like for the most part you follow that idea with unique NPCs, and even with Raider Overhaul and stuff. Is like you seem to enjoy that as well, with picking the theme that they're going with and kind of working within that.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of fun. Like Super Mutant Redux, the last update, big update we did. We added some of M150 stuff, and M has some absolutely amazing and very lore-friendly stuff, and then he has some absolutely, I love the guy, but batshit insane stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just crazy.
Yeah, I don't know how he decides on what to make every day, because there's so much stuff that's like, all right, well, that's fantastic, and then that's like, what?
And I actually had arguments within the team, some pretty brutal arguments actually, about what was lore friendly for a super mutant to wear and what was not. Like, would a super mutant literally put a bucket on his head and use it as a helmet?
I think yes, 100%.
You laugh, but yeah. And that was kind of a divisive little thing for a little while, where people said no. And then 76 comes out and you see super mutants wearing wheelbarrows. And, in that case, I win, because clearly if they're going to use wheelbarrows, they're also going to use buckets.
Right. Or the propane tank with eye holes in it.
Oh my god, dude! I so want to bring that over to Fallout 4. It's actually, that would be helmet. Really easy to do from scratch in theory for somebody who actually knows 3DX well.
Yeah, there are some really cool looking stuff in 76. Like I've been giving that game a pretty hard time after I burned out from it. Like I lasted about 6 weeks playing around with it, and I was just like, I'm like, I just can't do it anymore. But it's got some beautiful looking stuff in it.
I'm still a bit addicted to 76, which is one of the reasons why I'm like having trouble like diving back in head over heels with the Fallout 4 stuff I need to finish. Part of it was I started playing 76 launched right when I got injured, and so I had a whole bunch of time where playing video games is actually physical therapy. So it was a great excuse to play it. And I see so much potential in 76 that I've had trouble just abandoning it and walking away.
Yeah, see,
I'm a nut.
I could I saw potential, but I see the fix being it's going to require like 2 years of content to get there, is the way I look at it. So I was just like, all right, I need to step away, and I'll wait until, like, once modders have, I'm probably going to end up picking up a private server when they're available, just to see what it feels like. And then I'll probably disappear again for a year and wait to see what modders do, because another thing I noticed, and actually, let me ask you this: had you done much modding for any past Bethesda games, publicly or privately?
I'd actually taken a 5+ year hiatus from all video games, and Fallout 4 was my first Bethesda game.
Really? Okay.
Yep. In fact,
I
entered
have done
the
the
modding
same
world.
As you with taking time off of games. That doesn't shock me. It shocks me that Fallout 4 would be your first Bethesda game.
Yeah, and it was my first entry into modding, period.
Oh, okay. But one of the things that I've noticed with Bethesda games, which is interesting, is very few people migrate between games. Is that there's a couple of people, like big names, that kind of jump between games and they'll release a bunch of content, but for the most part, each game ends up getting its own hardcore set of modders. And so like I'm very curious to see who will step up and do that for 76 and create the crazy out there mods. It'll be interesting. But I assume it's going to be people who actually have played the game a lot. So like I originally had thoughts like maybe I'll put together a mod, but or like a version of Sim Settlements for it. But then after I couldn't even last more than 6 weeks. I'm like, well, clearly this I'm not going to mod it to any real extent at this point because I think you have to be in love with the game in order to spend the time required to do a mod properly.
Yeah, generally speaking, I think 76 is going to be easier to mod than most people expect, just because at its core, it is the Fallout 4 engine. There are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of deviations. There's a lot of things the Xedit team haven't decoded yet, but at its core, if you modded for Fallout 4, you're probably going to be able to do a lot of modding for 76 without having to learn from scratch, which is one of the things
Sure.
that I think keeps people isolated. The sheer fact that Skyrim is so different than Fallout 4 at its core when it comes to like the NIFs and the rest is pretty big, and it keeps people away from the game. Like even the people who knew NPCs wrote like they were experts for Skyrim. They
Yeah.
just they don't know the Fallout 4 NPCs. Like the system is that different.
Yeah.
76, however, is close enough that I think people are going to be okay.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting point because they do pretty substantial changes each round, and this is the first time that they really didn't. In fact, that's one of the things I love about Fallout 4 because I did mod privately for Skyrim, and there were so many limitations in it that were unlocked with Fallout 4 that it's like I've rarely found anything I can't do in Fallout 4, which is really exciting. And originally I was excited about the idea of 76 for modding just because I started modding multiplayer games, and so like the idea of getting back to that was exciting because it's like all right, well I'm already in a space where I have a lot of players who like to do what I do. So now if I am doing multiplayer stuff, not only could I be building stuff for them, I could be playing with them. Like right now, we can't share our experiences in Fallout 4 other than posting a video or build. We can build mods, but it's not quite the same as playing with people. Like I'm sure part of what drives you to play 76 and keep enjoying it isn't just the fact that you had the time or whatever that you see the potential. It's also you probably have made some friends in there or have friends that you RL friends that you're playing with or whatever the case. You have some social stuff that's going on there that keeps you driven into it. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh yeah, that's actually a huge part of the game, and one of the things that keeps most of the people in, even dealing with the issues that the game does have, is the social aspect.
Sure. And I think that's kind of like without that, and that appeals to me. Oh, because I've seen the power of that. Like I used to be involved in Destiny for a while and World of Warcraft for a long time, and the social side of that is really awesome. That's basically the best part. Like the game is kind of just something to have. It's kind of like it's like watching movies with your buddies where you're just kind of hanging around and maybe making fun of them or whatever. If like I know I used to do this like in high school and college, it'd just be like watching crappy movies. It was just kind of something in the background. It was really just an excuse to hang out with your friends. And online games kind of serve that same purpose in my eyes. That's kind of how they end up functioning. Like you can get hardcore about them, like you can get into the rating, but most people who I see get hooked on them. It's just because it's just a hangout.
Oh yeah, I mean
So
for
that
me,
part appeals to me.
oh yeah, absolutely. For me, a lot of it has to do with just the people that I meet. But I became one of the larger merchants in '76, which was definitely a mistake.
Okay. I
Well,
mean, they just had an update now that lets you have your set up a store, right?
yeah, so you can set up stores. Unfortunately, I cater to a very specific type of product to sell that can't really be put up in the vending machines.
Oh, this sounds sketchy.
No, no, not sketchy. It's just I basically am a legendary item broker.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it
it's a
sounds
little
like you're.
silly.
I think your job's gonna get taken soon. Aren't they adding a legendary trader or something into the game?
No, actually, it makes me even demand has increased.
Okay. Is the system not good that they
Oh,
came up with?
this no, the system's not fully released yet. They've just started allowing people to scrap their existing legendaries for credits that they'll be able to use to, make new legendaries. But the problem is
Okay.
you have to trade in legendaries to get the the credits, the tokens they have.
Okay.
Um, and some people are sitting on stockpiles of tens of thousands of legendaries, and other people aren't.
Okay. Gotcha. So
Yeah.
some people are going to be able to, and I assume this new system is going to be randomized so to keep the game going longer.
Yeah, so they haven't. Yes, at least in the beginning, it's going to be randomized, which a lot of people have cried out at, but generally people don't understand the psychology behind video games. That if you get everything you want right away,
Yeah,
what's the point of still playing?
right. It's mostly about the journey, not about the
Exactly.
goal. That sounds like what was that? I'm trying to remember the name of that character. What was that character in Diablo 1? Was it Wirt? The
Oh God,
kid?
it's been
Was it?
so long.
I think there was like a kid you could. I think that's the game it was in, where you could like buy random items from, and sometimes they'd be amazing. Most of the time they were terrible. Is that kind of what this is going to be?
Most likely. I mean, to be perfectly honest, that is most likely what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey,
I guess. Yeah. It's something you can do with all those legendaries rather than just having them hog up your inventory or drop them on the ground.
yeah, totally. But really,
Yeah.
what I need to do is actually, basically quit 76 for a few weeks, kind of like heroin, go through the DTs, and then focus on Fallout 4 for a while.
Sure. And just get your projects wrapped up.
Well, it's less about getting the projects wrapped up. I mean, something you said a little while ago is actually really true. You have people who play one game or the other. The thing is, a lot of these things, especially once you get involved in modding, are so the projects you get involved in, the ideas that you have, or even just playing the game, it's so time consuming, so all encompassing that you really can't do both. Like you can do one or the other, but you can't do either one well. So you have to make the choice. Do you mod and mod well, or do you play a game for fun, but do you actually play the game? Because it's really hard just to play something, at least for me, it's hard for me to do any of this stuff casually.
Yeah, I agree. I get really hooked onto a game, and like that's why I haven't really played. I played what have I played this last 2 years? I played Frostpunk. I really liked that game. I played that while I was on vacation visiting my father, and that was a lot of fun. But I only played during that time, and I played one other game, but not for more than 4 hours, and I can't even remember what it was. But it was something someone recommended to me. But anyway, because I tend to get really hooked on anything I do. I like to go passionate about it, which is why I'm drawn to RPGs. And yeah, so like I just can't let myself play games. I've got a stack of I bought a bunch of those PS4 exclusives because they look amazing, and I love the single player narrative style because they're kind of, you just play them and they're done. So they're a great way to avoid the addiction have of it. But I'm just like, I just know that if I go down that road and play one, then it's like kind of uncorking things, and it's like, all right, well now one more, and then I won't
Not
put
only
that
that,
time into a project.
can you actually play that game and not look for every single hidden door, every single optional subquest? No,
Yeah.
so I think one of the I don't know if Gambit still regrets this, but last year, a little over I think a year and a half ago now, he basically was browbeating me for the better part of 2 or 3 months, saying that I had to take a break, had to actually play a game, just because
Okay.
he knew that I was getting pretty stressed out. I did. I downloaded. I was a Kickstart supporter of BattleTech, so I started playing
Okay.
BattleTech, and I basically disappeared for 3 months.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think I'm so cognizant of. I think the other problem I have with it in that same vein is that now I'm so cognizant of that part of my personality that I can't even fully enjoy games if I'm in that mode. So like if I'm trying to prevent myself from getting sucked in because I know I have stuff I want to accomplish, then I won't fully enjoy the game anyway. So like it just makes me not want to actually play any games.
No, fair. I'm really good at committing. Like once I actually pick it up and
Yeah.
do X, generally I am so single-minded, which my wife both loves and hates, that I will get X tasks done, including
Right.
playing game. But getting me off that path once I've started is the tough thing.
Yeah. Well, you gotta be more choosy about your paths then. But
Well, yeah.
I'm very excited for you to disconnect from 76 and fix whatever's gone wrong with Raider Overhaul and get that released because some of that stuff looks amazing. And obviously, I've got skin in the game now to see the Raider faction really fleshed out doing the Conqueror stuff because we've like taken it to 11. Like we started with let's just use the Raiders as kind of a background for because we knew we wanted to teach the mechanics of our raid system, like how is it different from Nuka World and stuff. So it was like, all right, well, let's use quests to do that. That'll be a nice way because there's not nearly as many quest mods, especially big ones, for Fallout 4 as there are for a lot of the other Bethesda games, even within the same time period. And I don't know if it's just Fallout 4 doesn't have quite the audience, or if it's because things like the voiced player character make it much more tedious to write for, or whatever the reasons are.
No, I think that's it.
You think that's it? It's just the voice character
nobody
really messes it up.
Yeah, the problem is the subtitles don't work properly in Fallout 4, so they don't trigger when they're supposed to trigger all the time. So silent NPCs don't work terribly well because you may not actually get that the subtitles.
Right. If you get no subtitle, that's going to be terrible.
It's going to be terrible because you don't know what's going on. And taking it a step further, people will complain constantly about a disconnect between the protagonist's voice in the game and in the expansion. Like, if it's not exactly the same or really, really close, they will complain. Same with the followers and the rest. And I think that it's knowing that's an issue, I think keeps a lot of people away.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, that was kind of so that knowing that there's this problem and there's like not a lot of quest content, we're like, well, let's try and tackle it. Let's try and get some quest content in. Well, then once we started down that road, we're like, actually, Fallout 4 needs a way to play the bad guy from the beginning. Like, it just feels good. Like, that was one of the best parts of New Vegas is that it's like, oh, I can ally with the powder gangers right away. Like, that's amazing. And so, like, once we started exploring that, it's like, all right, well, now we got to take this. Let's take it to the end. So now we're on this mission to turn the whole quest line into like an alternative to the main quest line. So having more variety with the raiders just makes it more fun. Because the vanilla raiders, I love their style. I think they're great, but
there's not enough of them.
There's not enough. There's not enough gear. There's not enough. I think there's like 7 faces or something ridiculous like that. It's a very tiny amount. Obviously, unique NPCs already covers that, but Raider Overhaul,
want the gear.
Man.
Oh yeah, we got to get the gear. Yeah. But here's the thing, though. At this point, I need somebody to nag me. Everybody else is, and I'm not saying this in I want you to nag me. It's just
I've already nagged. I've nagged you as much as I was willing to nag you.
fair. It's just one of those things that I've gotten a little disconnected, and I just need that little bit of a nudge every so often to make sure that I refocus. Speaking of, you reached out to me a while back about if there was a way to incorporate NPCs from different DLCs. Did you figure that out? Because I did.
I think I got distracted from it. So I tend like you said about the squirreling down rat holes. I do it all the time. But once I catch myself, I just like shelve it. I'll just I might ask somebody. So I asked you about it, wrote myself a note, and I have notebooks everywhere. I've got color coded index cards. Like I have a chaotic system of organization where I will come back to it if it's important. And I think it went into one of those piles. So,
well, when you find that pile, let me know because I figured out the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know exactly what it was. Now I remember what it was. So my goal was we added into Conquer. So we have in some settlements a visitor system where as you build up your settlements, random people will show up and just use your shops and your recreational spaces and generate income for you. And I was like, what would that look like for the raiders? And I was like, it would be you would have some of the other gangs show up. So like the Nuka World Raiders might show up to your outpost and hang out and get and party with your raiders, or the Rust Devils. And so I was like, all right, I need to. So now I want a way to do that without dependencies on the DLC. Everything has to be done with get form from file and doing level injections on the fly is basically how I have to set it up. So it's it was a complicated problem, but.
Well, there might be another way.
Okay.
So I had to redo some of the work for Armor Keywords a while back. Super Mutant Redux and Raider Overhaul and unique NPCs were directly conflicting in a couple areas, and it was driving me crazy because making the patches...
didn't you release a big patch? You released a patch a long time ago for Raider Overhaul with Super Mutant Redux, right?
Yeah. We did, but because there's, everybody's still waiting on the Raider Overhaul, and part of the reason why everybody's waiting is just all the other little stuff that I find to fix to basically stall. Because everybody does that every once in a while. They just don't want to finish and they keep stalling. There's a lot of conflicts, inherent conflicts in weapon leveled lists, in some of the character leveled lists, and things like that in these different mods. And I was trying to figure out a way without using scripts because personally I've seen some really bad interactions when using scripts. And I finally figured out a way through some tiered, kind of complicated leveled listing that will actually, I think, work for you.
Okay.
In your case, they can pull from L care tables, right? The
Yeah.
leveled character tables. If you create those tables and you populate them in the core with vanilla NPCs, and then you have that file as an override in each one of the sub expansions with the expansion NPCs. So if you want trappers to visit the settlement, you actually have that as an override inside your sub ESP for Conquer to include the DLC. Then it will automatically pull from those overrides instead.
Ah, I got you. So I would
Is this
basically just
making
have
sense?
a patch available, an ESL patch available for each of the DLC, essentially.
Yeah. Yes, ESL or ESP. Yeah, just have a patch available. Um, and you could even roll it up into an all-in-one down the road. But the point
Yeah.
is, you could have a la carte patches that would be very, very small, and all it is a single leveled list overwrite of that table that would have vanilla NPCs if they didn't have the DLC, and the DLC NPCs if they did.
Interesting. Yeah, I've recently been thinking about doing some stuff like that of little patches to make things better. Like the one I absolutely want to do, and I'm definitely gonna talk to you about now, is the face gen data for all of the random NPCs we have. Because I don't package that stuff simply because Xbox users it would just destroy them. Like I mean, I'm already to use all of the Sim Settlement stuff that I've released takes like almost a gig and a half. So a lot of the dedicated
Oh
Sim
God.
Settlement players on Xbox, that's all they can play. They can play Sim Settlements plus a handful of non-asset mods like just real basic stuff. So to add 200 characters worth of face gen data is gonna just put them over the edge. But I figured that would make a great PC patch, even though ironically Xbox users would benefit more from the performance hit or the performance gains. I think there's enough people who play on PC on lower settings who could definitely benefit from it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, you're only talking about a uncompressed 600 megs, which is a lot, but maybe you could find a way to squeeze that in for the Xbox players.
Yeah, if only. I mean, one of the problems on Xbox, and this is Gambit and I were just talking about the fact that it sucks that we can't have optional files on the same page. Like I know
Yes.
it was done that way for simplified user experience, which I actually agree with Bethesda for their decision to do that because the goal was to bring in new mod players who don't understand this stuff. Like I think they understood their audience, which is that the average person who's really into modding and who can do anything complex, they're going to use third party sites and they're playing on PC. So like for the new guy who's never touched modding or for the console player who like obviously people who play on consoles it's because they're not as invested in gaming as people who play on PC because I think once people kind of like get way into gaming they recognize that the way to do it is on PC for performance reasons and just the potential for things like modding and stuff. So I think Bethesda made the right decision in the way they did that, but it does make it harder to give Xbox players like optional features.
I'm gonna respectfully disagree in one way. They
Okay.
could have set it up in the same way that most modern websites are set up, where it recognizes whether or not you're on a PC, a tablet, or a phone.
Sure.
There's a
So
handshake that takes place.
assume that somebody on a PC who's looking at it is going to be interested in a more advanced system and give them more options.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it may, and the other my proposal to when I was talking to Gambit about this was that maybe it was a matter of they were aiming also not only for new players but also new mod authors. Is that they've probably recognized the same pattern that I pointed out there, that it tends to be that each game gets its new set of modders, whereas you don't have just a bunch of carryovers. So then if everybody, if you assume there's going to be a lot of brand new modders, which there are a lot for Fallout 4, a lot of people who modded here for the first time, if they have a simple system to deal with, then it's probably better for them in the long run. Like if they just have, just the upload my mod button and they don't have all these complicated details and things to set up, that maybe that's better for them too. But I don't know. I
No, that's a
assume
that's a
that.
that's a very valid concept.
So I don't know. I agree with. I just agree with at least the keeping it simple, one file, one button push for player from the player side. Like I highly agree with that move. Because you want to have, if you want to see the mod community grow, you need more people involved. So like even if, because every one of us who's a mod author were originally a player of mods. and like that's what inspired us to do it. So the more people you have trying out mods, the more likely you're going to find those people who have that urge and the fortitude to become a modder.
Sure.
So I'm pro Bethesda.net. I like that they did that. I'm very glad they didn't turn it into a walled garden. Like I could see that being what happens with 76, which is a little concerning, where that becomes the only way to get your mods. That would be very unfortunate.
Well, so that's really tough because you're talking about a shared experience, and how do you gatekeep mods that are going to completely unbalance experience for everybody else?
Right. Yeah, I think it's going to be a necessary evil. I think they're going to have to route everything. It's just that it will limit obviously what we'll be able to pull off with mods. But I think even with just like I've never had to do anything with what's it called F4SE yet, but I have made heavy use of Xedit to pull off some crazy stuff, and I don't know if they're I mean, I guess like there's nothing that stopped. Like the creation kit will still continue to open files that have been edited in Xedit, so I guess it's not like it's doing any sort of checking or anything, or it doesn't have some special encryption that prevents you from doing that still.
Hush you, don't say that stuff aloud because then Bethesda will hear it and they'll add it.
Yeah, it'll. Well, I mean, the fact that we can like edit the BA2 files now for 76, did they stop that, or like can you still do that? Can you locally edit?
Yeah.
So the fact that they didn't stop that, I don't see why they would do anything so advanced to prevent.
So I've been enough of a pain in the butt with Bethesda with 76 that I've actually gotten a straight up telephone call from them. Like they called me on the phone and basically said, you got to cut this out. And I've got an open dialogue with some of the community managers now about some of the issues. And I actually brought that up. They actually have a huge problem when it comes to PvP, for example, because that's part of the core of the experience. It's really easy for me to go in and make all vault suits glow purple. So now all of the other people I'm fighting, since a lot of them are going to be wearing vault suits, they're really easy to see. How do you keep that from happening?
Yeah, I don't know how they would do that in their particular system. I mean, unless I can't think of any way they can stop that with the way their engine's designed. Like that would require ground up reconstruction. So
yeah,
it might just be that that's just permanently an issue. Like that game's just never going to have serious competitive gameplay. But I mean, maybe that's not one of their goals. Like it's kind. I mean, they essentially are targeting. They were targeting a single player audience with trying to draw them into multiplayer, and like I think the people who are playing the single player experience who are drawn to that tend to be less competitive folks. Like the number of people that play both like PUBG and Fallout at the same level are pretty rare, I would think.
I think you're right.
It would be two different audiences. So, because I've thought that is something that's I've been enticed to try since they put out that the hardcore like PvP-ish servers. Like that has enticed me a little to come back and give 76 another go, because that would at least be something different. That's not like where I wouldn't care if it was kind of a broken experience. Like it's not a true, like for me the thing that really turned me off on 76 is the lack of NPCs, and so every time I go into that game I just am constantly longing for them, and it's like, well, I should just play Fallout 4 then if that's what I'm after. Like that's where I'll get that experience. But
wow.
I
can see that.
My thought, or that's what broke it for me, is the lack of NPCs.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of story in 76. A lot of story in 76. You have to find it. There's a lot of really good voice acting in it, and yeah, I'm a fan. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit of a fan. But there's a lot of good content there. The lack of NPCs, I thought, made it, to be perfectly honest, feel like more of a Fallout game in a lot of ways, because you didn't turn the corner and run into somebody alive. You turned the corner and found two corpses. You found two people that died horribly, or killed each other in a fist fight, or killed each other over a game of chess. Well, I mean, and I thought that actually felt very Fallout.
I guess that, I mean, it does, but like I think the charm is having both. I think you're finding these stories of what happened to people, because that's something that's definitely Fallout. But you also are interacting with people in the now and having an impact on their lives, and that part is lacking. Like you doing things that matter in a sense to somebody, even if it's a virtual character. is lacking. And so instead, you're supposed to be doing something that matters to a real human, and that's supposed to make up for that. But I found that I wasn't socializing with anyone, and that wasn't happening. Do you feel like there's enough that you can do for other players that it fills that void?
So one of the suggestions that I've had with the community managers is there needs to be an incognito mode, because I will fill up a server with just people I know. And sometimes I just want to go in and, play the game. And I'm not able to anymore.
Right.
Because of this.
People come in and want to buy stuff from you.
Yeah, or just the people that I've had really good interactions with, that I've hung out and chatted with, just want to come and chat. Some of the people want to run around and, kill stuff with me, and every once in a while I just want to log in and do exactly what you wanted to do, which is not necessarily socialize and just go about it. And I'm at the point where I can't anymore. Like, it is almost impossible. And this is, I'm not saying this as I'm awesome. It's just, any MMO suffers from that, where, you build up a group of friends, and that group of friends, when they see you pop in, are going to pop over and say hello.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why we all had alts, and we would do them on different servers and stuff. So
that
when we needed that time by ourselves, we could go do that.
In 76, that doesn't work, because all of your characters go by your Bethesda
your
ID.
Account name, right.
So you can't
that
hide.
That was shocking that they did that.
I hated it at first, but it actually makes a lot of sense in the long run. Like, you can hold people accountable in a very different way than any other online game, because it doesn't matter which character they're using. That's the same person.
For me, it was shocking from the privacy perspective of I don't think anyone expected it. So then when it happened, it was like there were a lot of people who had their real name as their Bethesda.net name. And
yes.
And
thankfully, I chose not to do that.
Yeah, same here. But I was like, man, for other game sites, I've just used my full name as my login, because I'm like, no one's gonna see this. Like, I'm not gonna go on the forums. I'm just using it to log in. Like, I think for Origin, I have my full name as my username, and so to suddenly log into the game and see my full name would have been like, oh, that's no good.
Yeah.
I had the same. I mean, I had it. What was funny is that I could have had the same issue you described of if I had kept playing, because whenever I was on, I would always get people talking to me and like, hey man, love your mods, and it was like, okay, well that's flattering, thank you, but that puts a little pressure on. Now do I have to go build awesome settlements every time I'm in there?
Totally,
because I'm known for it.
But yeah. So the social aspect is significant in that game, like any other MMO.
Sure. I felt like it wasn't feeling the void of making my decisions or the stuff I was doing in the game matter, because that's something to me felt more like that was like the game design though. Like, the things you do in that game matter a lot less, because it's built. It has to be instanced for the fact that it's multiplayer.
Yeah.
Whereas you're going through a single player RPG and you don't keep getting the same quests, or the areas do respawn, but most of the time you're never going to witness that, because you're not getting constant quests to go back to those same areas unless you get hooked into the Radiant system, as opposed to the online, where it's just meant to be kind of a perpetual cycle and you're going to constantly run into the same stuff.
Short of EVE Online, what game has actually allowed people to, in an MMO format, have a significant impact on their environment?
Yeah, and that's why I've been turned off from the MMO format, and that's why I kind of got burned out from it. Like, I got way into WoW, but what I found was that it was always about the social aspect in the end. Like, I thought it was the game, but in reality, it was just like the gameplay was addictive enough that it could fall into the background and be, it was entertaining enough to keep me coming back. But really, what was keeping me coming back was the people. And I think because I basically, after seeing how addictive I could get to that, I just have a hard line no, I say that to myself, like, no socializing. So then a game like 76, if you cut the socialization out, it feels
it's not a game,
barren. It's not a game, right? And so that's probably where I and a lot of other people fell into, because I think a lot of the people who are Bethesda game fans don't want to socialize. They go game to escape. So then an online Bethesda game is foreign. It's just such a weird idea. And then when you take away the characters that are supposed to provide your meaning for why you're doing anything, the whole thing feels pointless.
No,
That's what I came to the conclusion of. I don't know if that's if that covers the basis for everybody. I think a lot of people would just be like, nope, it's just a buggy mess. But I think if that were the case, then I don't think even you guys who are still playing regularly would still be playing it if it were just like an unplayable garbage mess, as some people like to talk about.
I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Fallout 4, when it launched,
yeah,
had a few issues, right?
it still does have a few issues.
Yes.
It could you can
don't
lose some
look
saves
at scripting
pretty easily.
Yeah, don't look at scripting.
Yeah. Well, this is something you talked about earlier that I wanted to touch more on, was the fact that you see a lot of system, and it's a very interesting thing going on, and it's not unique to Bethesda games, but it's very apparent in Bethesda games. And if you watch like documentaries and stuff and listen to their like game dev talks about how they develop, they intentionally work in little squads, and that's the only way they're able to make sure the entire map is full of content. Is they'll have little squads of people that go forward and flesh those out. So and each of them are going to develop their own little strengths and weaknesses, where they're going to work, where they're going to lean more. If they've got a really good scripter on their little squad, they're going to have a lot more scripted sequences. If they've got somebody who's really good with dialogue, they might have more interesting side quests and stuff. Is that you're going to end up with kind of a disparity in the types and quality of various parts of the content that happen to prop up all over the game.
Well, and on the upside, you have a lot of very distinct areas because there will be a different tone because you've got different groups. But yeah, the quality suffers.
Yeah, well, but it also lets them produce pretty intense amount of content. I mean, like I've put in, before I got into if I don't count my modding time, I still had many hundreds of hours out of Fallout 4 without having, and I still see stuff periodically I'd never seen before.
Wow.
So I think like they did a good job of fleshing out, and most of it's pretty enjoyable. It's like I think the main beef most people have content wise with Fallout 4 is the main quest being kind of like the big shocking reveal isn't really as impactful as it should be, because you didn't have a chance to connect to the character, and then then forcing you to play that particular role just felt weird compared to other Bethesda games. But otherwise, I think the core gameplay loop and a lot of the side quests and stuff are interesting and fun. There's a lot of good stuff to find in it.
So I'm one of those people who doesn't actually complete the main quest until nearly all of the subquests are done. So the first time I completed the game, I actually felt like I connected with all the characters because I'd done just about everything else. I had exhausted almost every avenue available, except for Preston, which always has something new for you to do.
Yeah. Got you into that Radiant cycle. I got hooked. I got real tricked with the Radiant cycle with the Brotherhood. Did not realize I was doing Radiants for hours.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know how I didn't catch on. I was like, I must be building one hell of a machine, because you're collecting all these little trinkets. And at that point in my playthrough, I hadn't can proceed, because I kind of do what you do with the main quest, is I save that till toward the end. And so the Brotherhood hadn't really appeared. So I assumed I was working with the core Brotherhood faction. I was like, oh, we must be building towards something. And then nothing actually happens. You can do those quests.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes, I actually did the same thing. I thought that I thought I actually, for the longest time, I thought I was doing something wrong, and that's why the Brotherhood storyline wasn't advancing. Like I hadn't ground enough faction or something like that.
Right. That's what I was expecting to happen. Or it was, and then because these games can be quirky and quests can break. It's like, oh crap, did that quest line break? Which is actually really unfortunate. The fact that Bethesda has that reputation. So there's some things that we've been trying to do, because with Conqueror, we're trying to do a story that's developed over time. So it's kind of like the players are along the ride for us as we develop it, and we release it in chunks. And we've been talking about how we could play with cliffhangers doing this, because it's kind of a live service story. So like we could leave things as cliffhangers and then resolve them later, and it would be kind of fun for players to finally get the resolution. But we're like, what actually is going to happen is players are going to assume it's bugged because it's a Bethesda game and because it's a mod. So they're not going to realize it's a cliffhanger. They're going to be like, oh, well, I got to this point and then nothing happened.
Well, I guess you're just going to have a pop-up, like a huge pop-up that also pops up 3 times in a row because everybody immediately dismisses the first pop-up.
Right. Yeah, that's unfortunate. The RTFM attitude we've got to take. But I mean, that was one of the things. That's one of the reasons we were trying to do a lot of stuff in quest format, is because like in order for people to play something like Sim Settlements, we have to have. I mean, if you want to fully engage in all the features, you really got to watch a bunch of videos, and that's unfortunate. Like that's not user friendly to force them to go to third party sites and view stuff. So like teaching them in game in little nuggets, I'm hoping will encourage at least a larger percentage of the audience to pick it up without having to exit the game. But yeah, there's always going to be that handful that are just like, they basically just want to be spoon fed the information.
Well, come on. There's a reason why tutorials exist in the first place. I mean, really, it's the best way to learn some of the new content in any game. So if you could actually work that in, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's the goal, is always teach it in during gameplay, because it not only does it it makes it more fun because you actually get to play the game, but you also make it easier for them to digest it all. If it's not just like if when you have like tutorials for a mod, it can become overwhelming. You learn about all the features and it's like, all right, well, which ones am I supposed to be starting with? Like, or like, oh man, I want to get to that, but you didn't take the time to learn the other stuff first. Whereas, giving it to them in game over time, I think works out better. And I think that's why most games have tutorials, is because like, if you just show them all the features, they're just going to want to rush to the high end stuff that looks really flashy, as opposed to like understanding that the core of the gameplay loop is actually in these boring basics that you need to understand first.
Let's also not forget that most people are kinesthetic learners. Like, they learn through doing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that was a tangent. I don't even remember how we got here. We were talking about.
You were talking about conquest and basically.
No, but before we got to here, we were talking about Raider Overhaul, and then we got into 76, and then it went all over the place. But that's all right. That's why I love this style of podcast. I think it's fun to see where conversations go and see where people's minds are at and stuff. It's
totally, stream of consciousness is great. Like, and so I mean, the expansion you want to do, like the additional Raider stuff you want to do, is basically additional quests and storyline specifically around the Raiders, or do you just want to do more content, period?
Right now we're doing specifically about the Raiders. We're trying to take the idea of playing a bad guy and making that where you can just do it from beginning to end, where it's like we're intentionally offering options to break the main game, knowing that you're going to commit hard to our quest line instead. That's kind of the angle we're taking with it. And right now, we don't force it. Like, we don't force you to break any of it, but eventually we want to get to that point where it's like you're making a clear decision of like, you're going to murder so-and-so that's a core game character, and like you got to shit or get off the pot at that point and make the decision.
I think a lot of people are going to jump on the murder Preston bandwagon pretty quickly.
Oh, a lot of people already did, because we offered that immediately. Of as you walk into the Museum of Freedom, and as soon as you put one of them into Bleed Out, you gain a perk called Execute, which runs a script to kill Essential on anybody you run it on. So,
oh my god, that's awesome.
So you get to go in and do finishing moves on Preston and all of his friends if you want. And so like you get to set the tone immediately. Like, I'm not doing the Minuteman questline, but we're thinking we want to offer more options for stuff like that for some of the other characters, like knowing, like, because I think one of the things people don't want from quest mods is interference with the main quest, mostly because it tends to be that quest mods aren't fleshed out enough to be a suitable replacement, and that's where we don't want to be. We don't want to fall in that. We want to make sure that ours feels like a suitable replacement for a full character playthrough.
Sure. So how are you going to handle the people who want the like slightly more advanced and more adult stuff? Like, are you going to encourage let's see, indentured servitude, I guess is a polite way of saying it?
I mean, we have slavery built right into our mod, so
nice. You can tell how disconnected I've been with the community for the last little while.
It's a like half working system. Like, I've got a lot more work to do to make it fleshed out and feel good for people who enjoy that kind of depravity. But we're definitely taking like darker tones. Like, we've got so you know how in the base game you'll be walking around Sanctuary and you might find like Preston and Codsworth chatting or something.
Yeah.
We have some random events like that in Conqueror, and often like the conversation will end with one person getting their head blown off, because it's like we're trying to capture that raidery feel of like everything is like top dog, like the survival of the fittest. It's a much rougher way to live. So like we're trying to capture it from every angle there and give people the outlets to play their darker side.
No, I dig that. I will say though, not every Raider gang is going to be like that, because otherwise you'd have a very small gang very quickly.
Right. Well, that's another reason for us to have a story too. Is like that. Then we get to tell the story of our particular gang, as opposed to it couldn't be all of them. But we're just going hardcore with it because it's fun, and it explores kind of an angle you don't see in the core of Fallout. Because Fallout 4 is very good guy. Like almost almost none of the quests have a bad guy route. So
Okay.
you disagree? You think of a lot of them that are because I
So
think a lot of
I would
quests involve
argue.
killing people, but I don't think there's a lot of them where you're doing a whole lot of
I,
outright.
well, I would argue that the Brotherhood of Steel have noble intentions, but they're doing pretty horrific things, and it, uh, taken fully in context, especially if you see the synths as thinking independent creatures, they're basically committing genocide.
True. Yeah, on
You've got
on the main quest you have a pretty substantial choice there at least. You have the
yeah,
choice of
totally. But there's a
murdering
lot
major
of that.
factions.
I mean, the Brotherhood of Steel, throughout the main quest line, you can do radiance with them to basically go seize settlements from the Minutemen and force taxes. The taxes being you're basically going and stealing people's food.
Doesn't that system not really work? I was
It
under
doesn't
the
work.
impression, yeah,
It doesn't
it's one of
work
those systems
properly.
that should have been in there in the game and they didn't do it. They didn't
No,
complete it.
no, it's there and it will work. Like you can do a couple of the settlements and then it breaks after like two or three. At least
Got
for
it.
me, the last time I played. But the point
Yeah,
is,
because
there's that there.
my first playthrough, I did it on a settlement, and I regretted it, and you couldn't really take it back. And then I tried to do it, and I was like, all right, well, I already did it once, let's do it again, and it wouldn't work. So I just always
Yeah,
assumed that was broken.
I mean, and the Institute. Come on, randomly capturing, kidnapping, interrogating, killing, and replacing people just because you think it's going to better your cause.
Yeah, see,
I mean, they're bad
actually
guys.
that was something I always thought they did wrong. I thought that it would have been amazing if you go down into the institute and you find the people that were kidnapped, where
I
they just
agree.
got
They had the
that would have
tech.
been
Why didn't
so
they just put
awesome.
them in cryopods? Seriously.
Or give them a new life and they're just studying them and there's just like a sector where it's just like these guys are pseudo prisoners, like hotel prisoners, where
Oh,
they're
that would be fantastic.
and then you get to talk to them and like a bunch of some of them would be pissed, others would be happy about it. Like that would have been an awesome way to find it, and it would have made it feel a lot more gray. Because
I agree.
I like the shades of gray. In fact, one of the things we're trying to do with our Raider story is not just make them completely cruel. Like we're having a lot of levels of cruelty to it, but also to
Sure.
like recognize that the Raiders are just humans, and this is the way they decided was the best way for them to survive. Whether or not you agree with their methodology or their philosophies behind it is not the point. The point is that everybody is a shade of gray, and there's a lot of nuance there. So we're definitely exploring some of that. But I think the lack there's a distinct lack of getting to side with some of the more brutal things in the game. Like there's
Fair.
a lot of random murder in the game. Like you do seem to solve all of your problems by killing people, but it tends to always be you're killing gunners, synths, animals, or raiders. Like there's very little option. There's very little opportunity to be like, all right, let's turn on the Diamond City guards, or let's violently take over settlements. Like there's nothing.
Oh, that's absolutely there. Like you can do it, and the game allows you to do it.
In quest format though. I'm
Straight
just
up quest format? No. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
that's what
My
like when you're
apologies.
going through the quests, that's what I'm talking about is the quest, because I
Yeah.
obviously like that's one of the things that 76 lacked for me. Like without that, doing something for a character that cares about what I do and it's going to decide which direction they go in, like that is a core thing for me in the single player RPG experience with Bethesda's games.
So,
And
I mean, are you going to let people, literally play the raider that just taxes? I mean, the only sustainable raider is one that does a little bit of slavery, a lot of taxation, the standard highwaymen and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, we're working on systems like that. So like right now, it's all about the core, because the core of Conqueror, the idea was to introduce the ability to play as more of like a warlord. So rather than focusing on building settlements, you're building an army, and you build their settlements, but it's less important because the mechanic, you lose the need to worry about happiness. You can just focus on you build enough housing for your guys, and you need to have enough defense so that you don't just die to raids. Because your guys are mortal, so the goal was all about that, and so like the story kind of just teaches you how all that system works and kind of forces you down that path. But we're trying to expand on it, and like one of the things we have in work is like a perk called Shakedown, where you would get to rob random civilians by pointing your gun at them, and then they might turn on you, and you start to get a bad reputation. So we're trying to flesh out a lot of that, but it's a big thing because essentially we're recreating the whole game from a different perspective.
Oh, I take it.
But anyway, that's why I've been so obsessed with Raider Overhaul, and why I was poking you about it for quite a while there, is because the variety it would add would just be magical for something
I
like
will
this.
stop slacking. I promise. No, so legit, like one of the problems that I've got, like finishing Raider Overhaul, is when I sit down and look at the stuff that I've got to finish
Yeah.
at this point, there's a little bit of. Let me pull this up just so it's a little easier for me to explain, and so I'm not just making numbers up, because it's a little easier when I look at it that way.
I assume there's an overwhelming amount of tasks to do, or like when you think about the hours, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, so basically, I had created 4,573 unique object modifications. In there, the object modifications went into OMODs. So the OMODs went into mod calls, the mod calls went into other mod calls, and it was like this giant cascading system that I have to recreate from scratch. I had just shy of 2,000 leveled lists, that I
Holy
basically
crap!
built. Well, and they're fairly complicated nesting leveled lists. So
Right.
all of that I've been slowly having to recreate, and I'll sit down and I'll do a huge chunk of the work, and I'll see that I'm really close. But then I'll realize that I just finished the leveled list, I just finished the OMODs, but I still haven't touched the, 999 material swaps.
I assume that you've attempted the inject your records into a new plugin and it fails, ends
Oh
up the
yeah.
same
No,
corruption. Yeah.
literally, like the Xedit guys gave me on and off a couple weeks time trying to fix it.
Oh my god, that's so miserable. Do you think
Oh
you
yeah.
hit some sort of limitation? Because you would think that copying the records, it would identify while copying them. If it found a particular record or two that was corrupt, it would identify those and let you know.
So the Xedit guys have a theory about what happened.
Okay.
Earlier versions of Xedit, certain records, when it would copy it and it would create a new record, it would do it and it would only create and use 2 of the 4 bytes it needed to populate.
Okay.
And
Oh, because
one
you
or two of
started this
those,
before Elementor came back, so
yes.
yeah.
So
Okay.
1 or 2 of those, or even a couple hundred of those, CK can handle. It basically opens the file up and it starts cleaning it, and it will
Okay.
basically fix all of those records.
Okay.
And it will generally handle several hundred of them fairly well. But when you have tens of thousands of records that you've created from scratch or cloned and then repopulated with data and stuff like that, it you're basically at the point where you're, in theory, choking CK as it's trying to fix all of the records that are only have 2 bytes instead of 4 bytes in that position.
I wonder if that's a problem. So I have a plugin that I've been working on for a while, and it will occasionally when I save it, then and I've resolved this by just making backups constantly, but it will zero out the file, and then I have to go back to the backup. And I wonder if it's a similar issue to that, where I've just created, because I built a lot of it in Xedit, and I wonder if maybe it was something like that, where it's like the records aren't whole, and it's just the CK is just choking on it when it tries to save it.
Well, and that could be it. And I mean, a good way to test that is to basically take a chunk of that and open up every single one of the items under that chunk. So if you've got leveled lists in there, open up every single one of the leveled lists manually in CK. Let it choke as it hesitates when it opens up each one individually.
Uh-huh.
Save it and see what it looks like.
Interesting. So does it start to resolve itself when you're dealing with your broken plugin? I'm just really curious about how these, because
Oh
this is
yeah. So
something I'm about
basically,
to deal with, and the
I've got
idea of
the
rebuilding a mod from scratch is always horrible. So I feel
well,
your
yeah.
pain.
Well, and Raider Overhaul, the big thing is I took it from Max, who did a lot of very unique and very amazing things, but a lot of what he did is actually broken. It goes back
Okay.
to the things you can make edits in Xedit that technically doesn't work in the game, but it will work. It causes performance problems, or there's occasional rad roaches or things like that. Um, I actually had already remade Raider Overhaul from scratch once
Oh
and
Jesus.
rebuilt it from the ground up. And so the yeah, so doing that
A third
again,
time. Yeah,
yeah, a
yeah.
third time. I actually had to do it 4-ish times Super Mutant Redux, and I'm not going to get into that, but thankfully Super Mutant Redux has far fewer records, and so it was a little bit less painful.
Oh
Um,
man.
anyway,
That's all right. Well, I see why it's
the
become
new
perpetual beta. That's and
yeah,
not only have you done it multiple times already, you know the amount of work that's going to go in, but it's got to be a little bit nagging in the back of your mind, like what if it breaks again?
yeah,
Like,
no, and there's absolutely that. Like I obsessively will open the ESP as I'm working on Raider Overhaul and working on armor keywords. I open it in CK basically every day, once or twice. If I'm doing edits that I can do in Xedit that are safe to do in Xedit, I still
yeah.
will open it in CK just to see if I've hit that point. And more than once, I've hit a point where CK is just crashing, and I got to go back and find what of the 2,000 or 3,000 edits I made yesterday is causing that problem,
Oh man.
and it
And now, do you
sucks.
think so? I heard about somebody told me about this. Somebody who was on the Cascadia team said that one of the things that they ran into is that the CK actually has a hard limit for the number of forms it can load simultaneously. And what they ended up having to do to resolve that was create a version of Fallout 4 ESM with a lot of it gutted so that the CK could open, because they were using all the DLCs as a requirement or something like that, where it was they had so many records between their own mod and all the DLCs they were dependent on that it would crash the CK. So they had to have these gutted versions. And I think what they did was they
Hell,
deleted all of the persisted object references from the game world that they weren't going to be touching anyway, and it was just like their local copy
hmm
to work with, so that way, because what's it matter if your local copy is all botched up for while you're working on your mod?
hell, maybe that's what it is. I mean, it very well could be that. It could be a combination of a couple issues
Because
because
you probably
the
have tens of thousands of records for this, right? If not hundreds of thousands to pull off what you just described.
Uh, we'll say tens of thousands. I don't think I'm in the hundreds of thousands, but let's say tens of thousands. But I will say the. Let me take a look at the file size. So basically, the core file, and I've already cut from it that I'm pulling data from to migrate into the Raider Overhaul ESP, is 6 megs,
Okay.
which, to give you an idea, the workshops DLCs are a few hundred kilobytes up to 3 megs.
um, well, to give you some perspective, let me tell you the size of Sim Settlements ESP.
Oh yeah, no, no, share, share. And this isn't bragging. I'm just saying, like
No,
that's
no,
a,
I'm messing with you. Actually, it's huge. I know why Sim Settlements is huge, but Sim Settlements is almost 30 megabytes for just the ESM. But the reason actually is because the script data is actually stored in the ESM. So
oh,
our
and that's
city
brutal.
our city plans are just basically sets of coordinates and form IDs. And so, if we have a city plan that's 4,000 items, well, that's a lot of data. So, like, if I delete all of those, the file drops down to like a few megabytes, like probably smaller than what yours is. But it's interesting how the size can change just depending on the types of data you're working with. Because I don't think we have nearly the amount of forms you do. And you probably do you build most of those by hand? Like in this Raider overhaul you just described, you've got all of these different OMODs and you've got these
I built them all by
object
hand.
templates. Holy Jesus! And to do that multiple times, you're a saint,
Yeah,
man. You're a
no,
saint.
no, and no, no. Here's actually what broke me at one point, and finally, the Xedit team actually made a couple scripts for Gambit and I. I had 3,000 constructibles,
Okay.
KOBJs that I made by hand. So it basically was manually linking the OMODs or the armor records and the rest to
Yeah.
3,000 separate records.
Oh, jeez.
Well, and that
That's
takes, I
painful.
mean, before you have scripts to automate some of this, and you're
Yeah.
doing it by hand, and generally you don't get a lot of help doing this until you've already established yourself as a name. Like you don't
Right.
get
Right.
access to some of these tools until people know who you are. So you have to do a lot of this stuff from scratch until somebody makes it available to you.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it takes a lot of time. So
That's that's one of those meta things that I kind of want to talk about right now. Is
you do or
because
you
that's
don't.
something that's no, I do, because like that's something. If I'm a young person, because this is something that I ran into a lot of times when I was modding when I was younger, and I would get really pissed off about it. And I'm sure a lot of people who have tried to mod have gotten pissed off about it in Bethesda games, about the fact that there are what you just described there. If you have to prove yourself before you get access to certain resources, and a lot of people would, and I was guilty of this as well when I was younger, of crying foul on that and being like, well, that makes it so it's impossible for me to ever get there. And it's I think those hurdles are important because like I think otherwise each of the people that has those resources available has a limited amount of bandwidth and time available, and they can't just give it to everybody. They need to, but once you've proven you're also willing to put in audacious amounts of hours into a project, then it makes it so like, all right, well, this person is in the same boat I am, so then I'm willing to share some of my time to save them a lot of time.
Yes, I think that's part of it. I also think part of it is, and you probably know this more than anyone, explaining the same mechanic that you developed yourself or you discovered and there's not tutorials on, and explaining that over and over and over and over and over again. No, no, it's not that it's irritating, it's time consuming. Like
Right.
you can explain the same core mechanic and it may be only one little mechanic and it only may take an hour to explain this one tiny portion of the mechanic. But when you do that 30 times,
Right. Yeah, I
yeah,
think. I mean, I think it really just comes down to like time is the only resource, and that you just can't make more of. Like
yeah,
you can work harder and make more money. You can, uh, and money represents just about everything. But like time is just this weird limited thing. Like I find all the time, I have so many like grand ideas of projects I want to do, and it's just like when I think about the time investment it's going to require, and then like all the things I don't want to give up in my life, it's like that's just literally can't happen because of time. And so then adding on requirements like that of dedicating a lot of time to give other people resources. And I see for me, I'm not even talking about time to explain things. I'm talking more like doing things for people. Like you said, with those Exegeta guys are actually handing you scripts to help you through that stuff.
yes,
And
yeah,
like that's the type of thing I'm talking about time work, because I do that too for some people. For people, I'll write them a quick script to help them get through something because I know it'll take me 10 minutes and it'll save them a dozen hours. And it's like, all right, well, I know that person would have put the dozen hours in, and then that makes it, I don't know why that is. There's just some weird thing. And the best I can come up with is just a matter of, I can't give that time to people until I know they prove themselves, because it might be that I spend that 10 minutes on them and then they don't actually make any use of it at all, or they then continue to ask for more, thinking that, okay, well, that was no big deal for you, then you should be able to do this. Whereas if they've gone through the struggles, then they understand how long it took me to learn those things, and that was a valuable thing I just gave them. Maybe it's that. I don't know what it is, but it's something I could see a lot of. And I've been on a trip of trying to teach people. I have been ever since I got in. I've been like that for a long time, but especially with Fallout 4, I've been, I put out toolkits to teach people how to make stuff for some settlements, and now I've started a general mod training series on YouTube for the creation kit. So I'm trying to teach people, but I think one of the things a lot of them are going to run into is feeling like they're outside of the club, and I think that club has to exist because of time. I think. What are your thoughts on that? Like, why does that club? Why does that clickiness happen? Why does that tribal knowledge happen?
well,
And like, how do you explain it to new people so that they're not as frustrated about it,
so
especially young people?
whoa, let's be frank here. There's
Okay.
a couple different cliques of mod authors. There are the mod authors that are hoarding knowledge and skills and basically won't share them, where they'll share them with a select group of people and that is it. And it doesn't matter whether or not you've proven yourself or whether you're an established mod author, this core group of people aren't necessarily going to share unless down the road they think it's going to benefit from them. And I think there's a lot of mod authors that fall into that category. Number one.
Okay.
Agree or disagree? Then you've got the mod
Um,
authors that
I mean,
share.
I haven't run into any of them. So, but I don't disbelieve that they would exist. Like, because so far I've had the good fortune of everybody that I've reached out to has been very forthcoming with their information.
Part of that also may just be you went from you became very big very quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be that. It could just literally be like, oh, well, this guy. It could be like what I just described of like, all right, with the way I kind of judge it of like, I know you've put in the hours, I know you understand this stuff, I know I'll be able to explain it to you quickly or give you just a little bit to work from, and maybe that's it. It's just they
Or
know
it's going
that
to be
about me.
worth, or it's going to be worth it for me later on down the road because I can ask a favor back. And
Sure.
maybe I sound a little jaded here, and I apologize. You've
That's
got the
right.
mod authors that literally generate content, and it is for anyone to use anytime. M150 is one of those
Oh
guys.
my
Like
god,
he basically,
M150 is amazing. We use a bunch of his stuff. It's awesome. It's so awesome
yeah,
that he
yeah,
does that.
he's the other clique of mod authors where they will give you practically their soul just to try and help you out, And generally, if you can open up a line of conversation with them, they'll also create stuff for you just because they like helping and they like sharing that. And then there's the people who are willing to share once you've established yourself a little bit, so they know it's worth my time. And it's not.
Hmm.
It's saying it's worth my time isn't. It's not about me thinking that I'm better than you, and it's not about me being selfish. It's just I've got a wife and a kid.
Right.
You've got family. You've got a job. We only have so much time. Show me that you've actually put some time into modding, and this isn't going to be some harebrained scheme.
Right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think there's
I think we
three
also
groups.
get there's a I think where your jadedness comes from is I think it's grounded in the reality of what we see, and that those mod authors that maybe are hoarding are I don't know that they're necessarily hoarding because they're because they think they have some edge with it. I would bet it's more because they've been burned so many times over the years of people coming at them asking for favors and asking for information, and then those or being idea men. Like that's a very common problem in the modding community is that you get these idea men who come up and they don't actually have any skills or anything to contribute themselves, but they'll spend a lot of time trying to get resources out of other people to take their ideas and bring them to life.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah. No, there's a lot of them. Some of them have really great ideas, but the problem is you just can't have a good idea. You've got to bring something else to the table.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
absolutely.
absolutely right. In short, I wanted to identify the three groups that I think exist, and should there be basically a gatekeeper or a hurdle you've got to jump over? Yeah, there really does. And I'm sure some people are angry at you and me for saying this kind of thing,
Oh,
but
I just want. I feel like it's important to just talk real about it. Like that stuff exists, but it's not just a mod thing. Like this is a life thing. This is how every field is. Everything ends up in this situation, and I've always been curious of how it happens because I used to hate it when I was younger. I would get so pissed about all these stupid hurdles. It was like because I knew I had, I knew I was smart enough. I knew I had the skills to do these things. There was just some little thing that I knew somebody above me could hand me, and I would be able to break right through that problem. And like now, only now, like much later in life, do I understand why those hurdles were there and why, I had no right to just be handed those things, even though yes, people had the power to just hand them to me, that they weren't obligated to, and that's a hard thing to understand.
now I think that this discussion, this rule, does not apply once you actually go to the game studio level. I think once you hit the game studio level, the reason why we don't see as much um, communication or as much shared data is you have a bunch of people who went to school and spent a lot of time learning how to do this professionally, and they've made it their life's work. And some of them see people like you and me as not an affront, but it'd be kind of like the guy who changes his oil talking to the professional auto mechanic who's done serious work for 30 years
Right.
and talking to him as if you're equals.
Right. Yeah, because they've committed. Like they not only have they committed themselves to it, but they also depend on it as their livelihood. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. That definitely changes your relationship with a skill in that regard. But I guess I was just pointing out the fact that you'll run into these kind of hurdles and gateways no matter what aspect
Oh,
of
in
life
life.
you go
Yeah, yeah,
through. Yeah.
absolutely.
But in
Yes.
modding, I don't know. It's just yeah. Well, one of the thing and the reason I started the Bethesda modding series is like I think that to get to the point where you can start getting that insider information, I think that path can be a little easier. I think that it's very challenging to start because there's a lot of little things you just learn through experience, and it can be very hard to find the motivation to even get involved enough to get that experience because like I feel like in order to gain that experience you need to have a project to work on, and most of the time people's initial what we've all learned through modding is that first idea you came up with you're never going to be able to do it because it was way too grand or the engine doesn't support it or it involves way more skills than you think it does, and so I'm trying to give people like a path to the point where they can show they're committed that won't burn them out because they bit off more than they could chew,
You see,
if
this
that
is
makes sense.
motivating me just to prove you wrong.
Okay.
I'm kind of kidding, but no, you're right. Most people's first ideas just can't be done.
Oh, you were going to prove me wrong by coming up with a crazy idea and doing it?
Oh no, I've completed a lot of the crazy ideas that I have. I've
Okay.
had the core crazy idea, like the one that I had very early on, is the one that's not yet ready for people, which is the whole equipment framework. Like it was NPCs, monsters, and equipment, and the
Okay.
equipment one is the one that I just haven't gotten
Sure.
finished. But you're right. Most people, their first ideas, just because they don't understand what they're working with, is just insane. Either because the amount of work that it would take to change a single NPC to be recruitable,
Right. Well,
to
I think well most people's first idea is though I'm gonna do Fallout my city like
oh yes,
where they come in. I'm just going to build Fallout 5 for myself. And I think like stuff like that is unrealistic. I think even doing something like my first mod is going to be a fully custom weapon is too much. Like I think that I think people need to understand they need to bite very very small, get a taste, and then start working from there. And then you just kind of you learn through the school of hard knocks, and you start figuring out stuff. And then if you're if you've got it in you, if you've got the level of commitment required, you'll just keep chasing those squirrels, as you say, until you create something crazy awesome. But I think more people need to go in with like realistic expectations and just kind of some simpler projects to bite on to start.
do you ever find that you've got knowledge that you've paid dearly for that you hesitate before sharing?
Um, I'm trying to think of something. So like I won't give out the source code for simp settlements. Like that's something I guard. And not be necessarily for the reason you'd think that I do it for two reasons. One is I know a lot of my code is terrible and I don't want to be judged for it. And then two is I don't want someone to create a competing product that splits the community, or causes conflicts. So that's been something I've been that it's not. But I'm happy to share the knowledge with people. But again, I do it for people that I know will like that. I know that they've earned it. Like I know they put in the hours. For example, I'm like I know the entire workshop system probably better than anybody. Probably even better than the people at Bethesda. Like I know it so backward and forward. I know everything the engine's doing. I really understand that system fully and how it all interacts, even the stuff that's not clearly documented in the scripts. And if somebody came along and said, "Could you explain that to me?" Most people I would say no. But like Divine came to me the other day and asked me that, and I spent well over an hour explaining it to him because I've seen how much work he's put into mods like Nuclear Winter and how polished like Gas Master of the Commonwealth is. And so I'm just like, yes, I will take the time and explain that to you. And so like I'm definitely one of the people that does that. And it's funny to me because I had always railed against it when I was younger that people would, not help and withhold knowledge just because I was an unknown. And it was like, but I know I have it in me to do this, but they don't know that. And like, so I mean, that's rolling back a little bit in the conversation, but like so like it's guarded in the sense that I'm not going to just hand it off to anybody in a one-on-one format, but I'd be happy, I think, to share it all now in tutorial format because then I can be like, here it is. Like anybody who wants to look at it, like I only had to do it one time. I recorded it one time. It's out there now. You guys can go over it, but I don't have to keep. If I had to do that for each person individually, yeah, I don't think I'd do it. I think that's the point you made earlier of like having to explain the same thing, the same 1 hour conversation 30 times becomes grating, and it's literally like it's eating up a limited resource you have.
No, that makes a lot of sense. No, I get it. Every once in a while, even as much as I like sharing with people, I do run into that like little bit that it pains me to share, just because, for example, I haven't gotten to release some of the information, that I learned.
Yeah, that I could see.
Yeah,
That one I would hold on to until you get a chance to be the first one to release it. I would agree with that. Like that's otherwise you can if you're giving away stuff you've got in progress, then you're never going to get any of the glory for it. And like there is there's something to it. There's something about like we do want a little bit of glory out of this. Like otherwise,
well, sure.
yeah, it's not all just for ourselves. Because
I
if it
don't
was,
think
we
that
wouldn't
makes
worry
us
about release
bad.
dates. No, I don't think it's bad at all. But I think that there's because there are so many well-known mod authors who got burned out and tired of people demanding features from them, that there's a lot of declarations on the front of mod pages by some well-known people that are like, I made this for myself, I'm sharing it and if you want it, great, deal with it as is. But that tends to me to that's presenting this lie that they're doing it for themselves, which is not true. Like otherwise, if that was the case, you wouldn't release it because you wouldn't need those internet points.
Fair. No, no, you've got a really good point.
So I just think that there's a reputation in the mod community because of stuff like that, and I don't think it's intentional. I don't think they intend to lie. I think they're just sick and tired. They got broken. They got sick and tired of people telling them and demanding things of them, because that was something that's been very common in the modding community, of that of very entitled users coming at people pretty aggro.
Well, and that will burn out just about anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, my solution for that has been and then I had to retreat to my own space. So like I had to give up on managing my pages on the Nexus, and so like now the people that take the time to come and set up a account on my website, I will engage with, because they took the time to do that. And so I have so many people engaging on my website now that even if I tried to answer every question, I couldn't. I just don't have the time in the day.
Wow.
So it's like then why would I? Why am I going to bother dealing with people who are going to come at me aggressively when I've got more than enough people than I could possibly keep up with that are friendly. But
no, I definitely.
Not everybody has that option, because not everyone's going to do that. Like I think we got lucky with some settlements in hitting a unique gameplay aspect that nobody else was touching, but I don't know that everybody could get away with that of trying to get their user base to go to another website.
Still, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it's been. Well, that's how I've avoided the jadedness, I think.
And that makes a lot of sense.
But man, well, I'm very excited for Raider Overhaul, and I'm sorry to hear about all these struggles you went through with it. Like that sounds miserable. I can't believe you have to rebuild it a third time.
There's actually more. Raider Overhaul has actually been, like, the core of Raider Overhaul has been plagued by quite a bit of interesting nonsense. Like one of the core people had his computer die 2 times, like legit. Power surge, completely fried, and he was one of the core people involved very early on when we took over from Max.
I'm gonna do a backup of my computer as soon as we're done, because you just scared me.
Seriously.
Every once in a while I have this like panic moment of like, oh my god, my source code, and I will like run to my office and just throw all my source up onto a site just in case, because I'm like, all right, I would, at worst, because I patch every 2 weeks, I would lose 2 weeks of work, but I can't lose my source code.
Oh, come on, man. You tell me you have a NAS.
I'm sorry?
A NAS. NAS. Network accessible storage.
Oh yeah. I have all my stuff auto backed up constantly.
Oh, okay. No. That's
I don't trust it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Well, because it's like I can't remember the name of the software I use, but I have something that's just like perpetually backing up my files. But once in a while I'll find out it had crashed a week ago in the background, and I didn't catch it. It's so like I just don't trust it. But yes, I have my stuff backed up many places.
Yeah, so we, one of our core guys, and then he got sick, so he kind of fell off because of that.
Right.
We've actually had a bunch of little stuff like that that's cost us development time, and has made the entire process a lot more complicated than it should have been. But hopefully we'll get past it all.
Yeah, hopefully.
It'll be worth it.
Well, it sounds
so
like
I am fading. It is.
Yeah, I was 1
o'clock my time.
I was like, we're about 20 minutes longer than normally I would go, but I didn't want to interrupt the conversation because it was going really smoothly. So I've been really appreciated talking with you. It's very interesting to learn about your process, and I'm excited to see you find the time and energy to get Raider Overhaul out. And I think everybody here now, having listened to this, understands the pain you're going to have to go through to do that. So we will try and be very patient with you.
Well, thanks. I mean, a lot of that work is at least partially done, and I've gotten to the point where I'm basically breaking a huge chunk of it off into some submods, that whole perpetual beta thing, so Raider Overhaul is a little bit more of a sweeter standalone package. And in the end, it actually might. Well, I'll cross that bridge later. I'd love to have another conversation with you, man. This was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. All right, appreciate talking with you. Is there anything you want to tell people before we sign off?
Nope. I've learned the hard way. Don't tease people.
Yeah, I think we had that moment earlier in the conversation about that.
We did. Yeah. Don't tease people.
All right. Awesome talking with you.